Hey everyone! This evening we're delving into one of the most somber periods in history, a time when an ordinary birthmark might determine your destiny, when preparing your household's everyday ale could endanger your existence, and when excelling at forecasting storms might result in being burned at the stake. You're going to uncover 15 eerie reasons why someone might be labeled a witch during the medieval era, along with some extra horrors that will leave you thankful for today's society. This tale could clarify enigmas you've never resolved about why specific superstitions persist in our culture even now. So before we dive into the narrative together, please take a second to support me by subscribing to the channel, liking and sharing this video, or perhaps dropping a comment below, but only if you truly enjoy what I offer. I'd be thrilled to hear where and when you began viewing this, or maybe what your thoughts are on these historical enigmas. Now, let's dim the lights as much as we can. Switch on the fan for a soft hum to enhance the emotional depth of the story, and let's set off on this evening's adventure together. You awaken in medieval Europe, maybe around 1450, and spot an odd mark on your skin, perhaps a dark mole resembling a crescent moon, or a birthmark that anxious villagers could interpret as a devil's talon. In today's world, you'd hardly notice it, but in this era of myth and dread, that harmless spot on your body has suddenly turned into a possible verdict of death. Unusual birthmarks ranked among the strongest proofs of sorcery. You can nearly sense the wary stares piercing your skin as you grasp what this implies. Witchfinders referred to these as devil's marks, or witches' teats, convinced they were sites where Satan had contacted you, claiming you as his property, or areas where you nourished your infernal familiars with your blood. A chill runs through you as you recognize that what contemporary science attributes to basic genetic traits or slight skin issues, medieval perspectives saw as otherworldly stamps. The reasoning, if it can be termed that, was alarmingly straightforward. God fashioned humans in his flawless likeness. Thus, any departure from what was deemed standard had to stem from the devil's influence. Your birthmark wasn't merely a blemish. It served as proof that you'd forged an agreement with Satan, maybe even prior to your birth. Scholars continue to debate if these notions arose from authentic spiritual panic or from pragmatic motives to remove societal misfits and claim their assets. You learn that expert witch hunters, those itinerant experts in detecting the occult, maintained extensive lists of dubious markings. A mole close to your eye could imply you had the power to inflict the evil eye. A birthmark on your hand might mean you'd inscribed your name in Satan's ledger with that same digit. Even beauty spots, those small dots that Renaissance women would eventually apply artificially for style, could signify your depravity. The inspection procedure was a horror beyond imagination. Accused females were disrobed and scrutinized by designated authorities, typically males, who scoured every part of the skin for these revealing signs. They employed pins and needles to check if the marks responded to sensation. If you experienced pain, you could be deemed innocent. But if you sensed nothing, maybe due to numbness from fear or injury, this confirmed the mark's unearthly nature. You grasped with dread that this set up an inescapable trap. Sensing pain or lacking sensation could both serve as incriminating factors. What's even more disturbing is how birthmarks frequently appear in families. You see that if your mother faced charges of witchcraft due to her distinctive marks, you'd instantly become a suspect as well. Sorcery was thought to be inherited, transmitted through lineages like hair color or stature. Your very genetics could be viewed as tainted. The fear spread beyond clear birthmarks to any atypical skin issue. Warts, scars, even fleeting bruises could all be seen as mystical indicators. You picture how a minor mishap leaving an oddly formed bruise could abruptly change you from a trusted villager to a presumed Satan worshiper in a single night. The boundary between ordinary and otherworldly wasn't drawn by proof or rationale, but by terror and folklore. Notably, not every society regarded unusual birthmarks with such alarm. In certain ancient customs, unique birthmarks were seen as emblems of godly blessing or signals of an individual's fate. But medieval Christian Europe had cultivated an almost obsessive dread of anything straying from their strict view of divine normality. You can nearly sense the burden of perpetually concealing your skin, always draping yourself in layers, never permitting anyone to view what innate variations your body might show. Bathing turns impossible, though medieval folks didn't engage in much leisure, swimming regardless. Even close relationships grow perilous as a partner might uncover your marks and either flee in terror, or worse, inform the officials. The sorrow lies in how many individuals wore these marks proudly in prior eras. Celtic societies, for example, frequently saw unusual birthmarks as links to the spirit world, not wicked, but enchanting in beneficial ways. Vikings at times viewed specific marks as signs of a person's forthcoming accomplishments or heavenly safeguard. But in medieval Europe, you recognize that your body is turned into a surface where others perceive tales of wickedness and decay. No matter your true inner self, your personality, your deeds, your devotion, none of it holds as much weight as the chance of how your skin formed in your mother's womb. You grasp deeply how prejudice based on looks could truly become a question of survival or demise, and how a community's dread of the atypical could turn blameless people into blame figures for everything from poor yields to enigmatic ailments. As you trace your fingers over that imagined birthmark, you start to fathom how fragile existence could be when myth governed logic, when terror surpassed empathy, and when differing could equate to death. You look around your modest home and spot something that would appear entirely typical to people today, but brands you as highly dubious in medieval culture. You reside alone as a woman, lacking a spouse, parent, or male overseer nearby. You've just engaged in what many regard as the riskiest behavior imaginable in this period, surviving autonomously. The medieval society functioned on a strict conviction that females needed perpetual male oversight, not merely for safety, but for ethical direction. You sense the intensity of their gazes as villagers murmur that any woman dwelling solo must be involved in something malevolent. After all, what pious woman would select isolation over the appropriate shelter of wedlock or kin? In their view, your self-reliance isn't liberation, it's a sign of depravity. You learn that the church preached that women were naturally frailer vessels, more prone to Satan's lures. Without a man's religious oversight to steer you, you're thought to be drifting in ethical obscurity, open to each infernal suggestion. Your isolation turns into evidence that you've spurned God's innate structure. And defying heavenly structure was the initial move toward sorcery. The real motives for your unmarried state hold little sway over your distrustful neighbors. Maybe your husband perished in one of the perpetual conflicts or epidemics that ravaged medieval Europe. Perhaps you never wed because no fitting unions were set up, or because you were too impoverished to draw admirers. Scholars continue to debate if the elevated count of unmarried women charged with sorcery mirrored true conviction in their mystical peril, or merely society's wish to remove financial loads and reallocate their holdings. You see that residing alone thrusts you into an untenable position concerning your everyday livelihood. You have to labor to sustain yourself. But female employment was sharply restricted and often regarded with doubt. If you're overly prosperous at maintaining yourself, villagers ponder what otherworldly aid you're obtaining. If you falter and seem destitute, they presume you're facing penalty for your transgressions. There's no victorious stance for a woman operating beyond male guardianship. The finances of your circumstance grow especially hazardous during tough periods when harvests falter or sickness hits. Groups seek culprits, and you, the woman who doesn't align with their societal frameworks, become a clear mark. Your autonomy renders you an outsider, and outsiders are invariably the primary suspects when calamity occurs. You can nearly perceive how your neighbor's original apathy slowly shifts into doubt, then alarm, then open antagonism. Your residence itself turns into proof against you. Dwelling alone grants you seclusion, and seclusion implied chances for covert pursuits. What are you doing inside with nobody to observe your conduct? Certainly, you must be concocting elixirs, weaving enchantments, or hosting demonic guests. The very barriers that should offer solace become bars in the tribunal of communal judgment. You comprehend that even your routine habits seem ominous through their perspective. Speaking to yourself while laboring, a totally ordinary trait for someone in solitude, becomes indication that you're chatting with unseen fiends. Remaining awake late perusing by candle flame, if you're educated, implies you're examining prohibited volumes. Even maintaining irregular schedules because you have no one else's timetable to follow becomes confirmation of otherworldly deeds. The judicial system grants you scant defense. In most medieval tribunals, a woman's statement held less validity than a man's, and your position as a self-reliant woman further reduced your trustworthiness. You miss the societal ties that might shield you. No spouse's kin to uphold your honor, no male kin to affirm your integrity. You're juridically and communally exposed in manners that wedded women, despite their own constraints, are not. What renders this especially heartbreaking is that numerous women dwelling alone were in fact widows who'd lost their partners to warfare, disease, or mishap. These women often held precious abilities, curative wisdom transmitted across generations, fermenting methods, fabric proficiency that rendered them financially feasible but socially questionable. Your grandmother's formulas for curing maladies, or your mother's approaches for storing provisions, could readily be reframed as mystical recipes when viewed through the prism of mistrust. You observe how other women in the group regard you differently, too. Married women might sympathize with you, but they also dread linking with someone so evidently outside societal standards. They fret that associating with you might draw doubt on their own piety. This seclusion nourishes itself, rendering you more isolated and thus more dubious with every passing day. The paradox stings profoundly when you recognize that some of the most skilled and clever women of the time often resided alone out of need or preference. Herbalists, midwives, brewers, and weavers regularly ran autonomous enterprises, but their very proficiency and autonomy made them targets. Achievement without apparent male backing implied otherworldly help. Surely no ordinary woman could thrive solo by natural methods. You can nearly savor the sharp paradox that the same culture that generated economic situations compelling women to exist independently then penalized them for that self-sufficiency. Wars claimed husbands, plagues wrecked families, and financial hardship hindered marriages. Yet the women who endured these disasters encountered doubt for their endurance. Even your age acts against you. Young, unmarried women might still be seen as eligible for marriage, making them less intimidating. But as an older single woman, you embody something disconcerting. A female who's progressed beyond childbearing utility while upholding independence. Medieval perspectives found it hard to classify such women, and what couldn't be classified was often branded hazardous. The mental strain of perpetual doubt presses upon you. Every exchange turns into a display where you must demonstrate your ordinariness and piety. You alter your conduct, your words, even your facial expressions to seem less menacing. But this very prudence can be seen as proof that you're concealing something, generating a spiral of paranoia that's increasingly hard to break free from. As you rest in your isolated home, you grasp deeply how self-reliance, something we honor today, could become a fatal verdict in a period where adherence to strict societal frameworks wasn't just anticipated, but essential for endurance. You tenderly care for your modest plot of herbs, your fingers lightly grazing leaves that could reduce a child's fever or relieve an elderly woman's sore joints. The paradox doesn't escape you that the same expertise that renders you essential to your group during illness could also position you for execution when panic overrides logic. Your proficiency in plant-based remedies, handed down through lines of knowledgeable women, has turned into a weapon with two edges in this time of doubt. The medieval society urgently required healers like you. With doctors rare and costly, most folks depended on local wise women who knew which plants treated everyday complaints. You understand that willow bark can lessen pain and fever, that chamomile calms digestive upset, and that particular mushrooms can soothe the torment of challenging labors. But this expertise, once esteemed as divine insight, now bears the stigma of potential sorcery. You bear the load of centuries-old heritage on your shoulders. Your grandmother instructed your mother, who instructed you, forging an uninterrupted chain of curative wisdom that precedes Christianity in these territories. But the Church progressively regarded such customary methods with mistrust, particularly when they outperformed official invocations and sacred water. Your effectiveness at healing turns into proof against you. Surely only otherworldly forces could render your treatment so potent. The shift in viewpoints didn't occur suddenly. Early Christian leaders often accepted herbalism as part of God's bountiful nature, believing that heavenly design supplied plants expressly for human recovery. Monasteries kept vast herb gardens, and monks were frequently the most adept healers in their areas. But as the medieval era advanced and witch-hunting mania escalated, the distinction between divine healing and infernal magic grew increasingly hazy. You learn that your expertise renders you threatening because it grants you authority over existence and demise. When you effectively cure a sick youngster, thankful guardians commend your ability. But when, despite your utmost efforts, a patient passes, murmurs arise about whether you intentionally prompted the death via harmful magic. The same plants that mend can also injure when misused, and this twofold essence fuels doubts about your real motives. Scholars continue to debate if the hounding of wise women stemmed from true spiritual worry or a purposeful effort by male-controlled medical establishments to eradicate rivals. As structured medical education became more formalized in universities' institutions that barred women conventional healers, increasingly saw their approaches challenged and their intentions questioned. Your array of dried herbs suspended from your ceiling beams narrates a tale of meticulous preparation and timely collection. But to wary observers, they resemble components for ominous concoctions. That container of ground foxglove that can stabilize heart rhythms in small amounts but prove fatal in larger doses becomes proof of your capacity to poison adversaries. The mandrake root you employ for pain alleviation carries age-old links to magic and the occult that eclipse its valid therapeutic qualities. The schedule of your herb gathering also operates against you. You know that many plants are strongest when collected at particular moments. Some perform best when plucked before sunrise, others under the full moon when their potent compounds are at peak. But these ideal harvesting times coincide dubiously with conventional magical rites. Your pragmatic grasp of plant chemistry seems inseparable from otherworldly ceremony to those who lack comprehension of the science underpinning your techniques. You recognize that even your assessment abilities become questionable. Your skill at inspecting a patient's skin tone, checking their pulse, and noting their symptoms to select the appropriate remedy resembles fortune-telling to those unacquainted with clinical scrutiny. When you accurately forecast that a fever will subside in 3 days, or caution that a wound could get infected, your precision implies otherworldly prescience rather than seasoned discernment. The gendered aspect of this persecution clarifies as you observe that male herbalists encounter less doubt than their female peers. When monks or male doctors utilize the same plants and methods, their labor is more apt to be perceived as scholarly practice rather than sorcery. Your gender renders your expertise seem more alarming, more likely to derive from demonic origins rather than academic pursuit. Your recipes and mixtures, meticulously noted or committed to memory, become proof of grimoires and mystical chants. The Latin terms you might know for diverse plants sound like alien invocations to ears unfamiliar with scientific terminology. Even your approach to blending ingredients, stirring clockwise or counterclockwise depending on what suits various preparations, can be viewed as ritualistic magic rather than functional method. The solitude needed for your work heightens the mistrust. Collecting herbs often entails journeying into woods and meadows alone, especially at dawn or twilight when plants are most effective. These lone trips to threshold spaces, the borders between society and wildness, the edges between light and dark, align flawlessly with legendary accounts of witches' deeds. You can nearly sense the paranoia escalating as triumphant treatments become signs of otherworldly support. While failures imply malevolent purpose, there's no secure neutral ground where your innate curative talents can exist without doubt. Even imparting your expertise to others becomes risky, as it implies you're disseminating sorcery rather than distributing useful insight. The tragic paradox weighs heavily on your spirit. Communities urgently required healers, yet they concurrently dreaded and hounded the very individuals who held the wisdom to aid them. Your sincere wish to alleviate pain and preserve lives could be distorted into proof of a covenant with wicked powers, rendering empathy itself a perilous feeling to exhibit too freely. Do you recall those peculiar birthmarks we explored earlier? Now envision merging that bodily proof with your grasp of curative herbs. The blend forms what witch hunters would deem a nearly undeniable case against you. Your body displays Satan's emblem, and your mind harbors his mysteries, a lethal pairing in a time when dread overpowered reason and myth prevailed over science. As you cautiously stow your curative herbs away from curious gazes, you comprehend that knowledge itself has become a type of illicit goods, and your greatest contribution to humankind might eventually lead to your downfall. You caress the smooth black coat of your cat companion as she purrs happily in your lap, oblivious that her mere existence in your dwelling has just amplified your risk of sorcery accusations by a margin that would horrify any mathematician of the time. That blameless animal, whose only offenses are hunting rodents and finding cozy places by your hearth, has turned, in the view of medieval culture, into a demonic familiar dispatched straight from hell's depths to aid you in your otherworldly pursuits. The evolution of cats from venerated beings to objects of doubt reveals a captivating account of how swiftly cultural views can alter. Ancient Egyptians honored cats as holy entities, and early medieval Christians first regarded them as helpful creatures endowed by God to guard grain reserves from pests. But amid the convoluted rationale of witch-hunting hysteria, cats, especially black ones, grew linked with the devil. You learn that the shade of your cat's fur holds immense meaning in this mythical age. Black cats, once deemed particularly fortunate in numerous cultures, now symbolize the pinnacle of malevolence. The logic adheres to medieval Christianity's habit of linking obscurity with transgression and brightness with sanctity. Your black cat's glossy fur becomes visual confirmation of her tie to the Lord of Shadows. While her nighttime routines match impeccably with the alleged timing of witches' operations, the Church's intricate bond with cats played a major role in their vilification. Pope Gregory, the Ninth's papal decree Vox in Rama in 1233 formally denounced cats as tools of Satan veneration, portraying them as beings that devil adherents kissed in indecent ceremonies. This ecclesiastical declaration lent official approval to apprehensions that had been simmering in folk culture, elevating local myths to religious dogma. Your cat's conduct, entirely innate to current insight, seems otherworldly to medieval viewpoints. Her capacity to navigate darkness implies she traverses the shadow domain where fiends reside. When she gazes fixedly at vacant corners, you know she's alert for rodents or reacting to noises you can't detect. But your villagers see this as interaction with unseen malevolent ghosts. Her self-sufficiency and refusal to follow orders like canines do renders her seem obstinate and defiant traits tied to Satan's essence. You recognize that your bond with your cat offers persuasive proof for those aiming to verify your sorcery. The idea of familiar spirits, demons adopting animal shapes to help witches, became pivotal to witch-hunting doctrine. Your cat's fondness for you, her habit of trailing you through the house, and her seeming sensitivity to your emotions all imply otherworldly exchange to dubious watchers. Scholars continue to debate if the hounding of cats stemmed from true spiritual conviction or fulfilled more utilitarian aims, such as removing rivals from self-reliant women who often kept cats for vermin management. Unmarried women with cats grew especially questionable because the creatures implied both autonomy and potential otherworldly aid in sustaining that autonomy. The schedule of your cat's behaviors works against you both. Cats are inherently crepuscular, most lively at dawn and dusk, exactly the periods when witches were thought to enact their arts. When your cat vanishes for hours in the day, napping in concealed areas as cats typically do, neighbors presume she's journeying to the ethereal plane to relay your deeds to fiendish overlords. Your cat's hunting skill gets distorted into proof of otherworldly talents. Her prowess at capturing rodents and birds implies she holds abilities surpassing regular animals. When she presents you with deceased prey as tokens, a standard cat action expressing affection, mistrustful minds see this as sacrifices for mystical rites. Even her knack for landing upright when dropping seems otherworldly to folks who don't grasp fundamental physics. The medieval perspective grappled with cats' seeming telepathic talents. Your cat appears to sense approaching storms, growing uneasy before climatic shifts that humans can't yet perceive. She shuns certain individuals who later reveal themselves as unreliable and displays warmth toward those who prove truly benevolent. Modern science accounts for these talents via enhanced senses and behavioral scrutiny. But medieval accounts resorted to otherworldly involvement. You observe how your cat's presence impacts guests in your home. Some folks instantly feel uneasy around her, viewing their discomfort as spiritual detection of wickedness rather than mere individual taste or feline sensitivities. Others find her remarkably appealing and sociable, which gets seen as proof that she's weaving spells to enhance your likability. There's truly no manner for your cat to act that won't be deemed dubious by those already persuaded of her otherworldly essence. The nurturing conduct of female cats grows especially troublesome. If your cat bears kittens, the intense protectiveness she exhibits toward her offspring seems fiendish to those who think motherhood should be mild and compliant. Her readiness to confront far larger dangers to safeguard her young implies otherworldly vigor and boldness that no common creature should have. Even your cat's tidiness acts against her. Her meticulous grooming routines, washing herself clean several times each day, can be seen as ceremonial cleansing or the erasure of traces after nighttime otherworldly pursuits. The reality that cats naturally cover their excrement implies they're inherently secretive and misleading. Qualities medieval perspectives linked with Satan's minions. You can nearly sense the intensity of your neighbor's gazes when you're spotted conversing with your cat. In a time when many held that animals couldn't genuinely comprehend human language, your talks with your pet imply you're issuing her directives for otherworldly tasks. Her replies, purring, meowing, nuzzling against you, seem like thorough accounts of fulfilled duties rather than basic displays of cat fondness. The logical precision of witch hunting reasoning clarifies as you see that possessing any cat renders you questionable. But having a black cat renders you nearly definitively culpable in many opinions. The fusion of your gender, your self-reliance, your plant expertise, and now your cat companion forms what accusers would deem an overpowering argument against you. Do you recall that birthmark we examined and your perilous grasp of curative herbs? Add a black cat to that blend, and you've forged what medieval witch hunters would regard as the ideal otherworldly tempest. Your faithful friend, who sought nothing beyond sustenance, refuge, and the occasional chin rub, has unwittingly become a central witness in the prosecution against your life. As your cat purrs serenely in your lap, completely ignorant of the peril she embodies, you comprehend how even the purest bonds can be turned into weapons by dread and myth. You glimpse your reflection in a pail of water and see the flow of red hair framing your face, that striking fiery tresses that your mother always claimed made you resemble a sunset deity. But in medieval Europe, your splendid auburn strands have just drawn a bullseye on your back, bigger than any birthmark or black cat could produce. Your hair hue, decided by nothing but a genetic chance, has become a glaring proclamation of your alleged link to hell's flames themselves. The connection between red hair and wickedness runs so profound in medieval society that you can practically feel the mistrustful stares scorching your scalp whenever you step outdoors. Church doctrines had warped the innate allure of red hair into something ominous, asserting that Judas Iscariot himself had fiery locks when he betrayed Christ. Your hair color turns into ancestral proof that you share lineage with history's most infamous betrayer, bearing his taint in your very strands. You learn that medieval medical concepts offered apparently scientific support for this bias. The prevailing health philosophy instructed that red hair signaled a surplus of hot choleric fluids in the body, the same disequilibrium that allegedly triggered fierce dispositions, sexual looseness, and vulnerability to demonic sway. Your hair shade becomes a diagnostic instrument indicating your whole temperament and ethical nature, irrespective of your actual conduct. The Celtic and Germanic groups in medieval Europe encompassed many redheads, forging an unlucky overlap between racial bias and otherworldly doubt. As Christianity expanded across these areas, converting peoples who had formerly exalted red hair as a mark of heavenly favor or fighter spirit, the new faith methodically vilified many customary emblems. Your forebears' proud legacy becomes your hazardous burden. You recognize that writings and legends exacerbate your plight. Medieval narratives regularly depicted red-haired figures as disloyal, desirous, or tied to ethereal powers. The scarce positive red-haired characters in stories were typically otherworldly beings themselves, fairies, phantoms, or ethereal entities whose essence affirmed the link between red hair and the mystical domain. Scholars continue to debate if anti-redhead feelings stemmed from authentic doctrinal worry or supplied handy rationale for oppressing Celtic and Germanic groups during Christian growth. The timing of heightened doubt toward red hair aligns dubiously with political clashes among diverse European ethnic factions. Your everyday existence turns into a perpetual act of attempting to demonstrate normality despite your noticeable hair color. You cover your head with scarves and veils more thoroughly than other women, always making sure no defiant lock escapes to reflect the light and remind watchers of your distinctiveness. But even concealed, your red hair poses issues. The very effort of hiding it so meticulously implies you're conscious of its ominous connotations. The seasonal shifts in your hair tone work against you in ways that women with blonde or brunette hair never face. In summer, sunlight exposure brightens your red locks to vivid copper, while winter might deepen them to auburn or even seem brownish in faint illumination. This innate variation gets seen as proof of otherworldly shape-changing talents, suggesting you can modify your look via magical methods. You notice how your hair color influences people's recollection and accounts about you. Red hair is striking and memorable, making you simple to recognize in witness reports. When something amiss happens in your group, people recall spotting the red-haired woman near the scene, even if many others were there. Your conspicuous look renders you a handy scapegoat for any mysterious event. The genetic scarcity of red hair functions both in your favor and against it. In groups where red hair is exceedingly rare, you might be viewed as so exceptional that you're obviously imprinted by otherworldly forces. But in Celtic areas where red hair is more common, you confront different perils. Doubt that your whole family line bears cursed blood, making you part of an inherited sorcery custom. Your hair's consistency and behavior contribute to the otherworldly theories encircling you. Red hair is often rougher and more untamed than other hues, demanding distinct care and styling approaches. When moisture causes your hair to frizz or curl erratically, watchers interpret this as your locks reacting to atmospheric ethereal energy. When static makes your hair rise in arid weather, it seems to move via otherworldly force. The medieval obsession with bodily correspondences means your red hair foretells other physical traits that heighten doubt. Red hair often pairs with fair skin that sunburns easily, creating a complexion that looks sickly to medieval eyes used to sun-bronzed laborers. Your freckles become extra signs of otherworldly influence, while your light eyes seem to penetrate souls with unnatural force. You can nearly feel how your hair color shapes the reading of your every deed. When you show typical human feelings, rage, ardor, delight, or sorrow, watchers ascribe additional intensity to these emotions due to your red hair. Your alleged fiery nature means that any sentiment you display seems more perilous and less restrained than the same feelings shown by brown-haired villagers. The tie between red hair and sensuality creates further troubles in a society already wary of female sensuality. Medieval minds linked red hair with unrestrained sexual desire, presuming that red-headed women were more prone to tempt men or partake in immoral conduct. Your hair shade becomes proof of a lustful disposition, and a lustful disposition was seen as a route to demonic decay. Even your relation to fire itself becomes questionable. When you tend your cooking fire or ignite candles, watchers note how naturally the flames appear to react to your presence. Red hair and fire share similar color ranges, forging visual ties that imply otherworldly kinship. Your skill at constructing good fires or maintaining steady flames seems like magical dialogue with elemental powers. The youngsters in your group learn early to dread and shun redheads as their guardians transmit generations of myth about your hair color. You observe them pointing and whispering when they spot you, already soaking up the biases that will make them distrustful of redheads throughout their lives. The cycle of bias sustains itself across each generation. Do you remember your plant expertise, your black cat, and that dubious birthmark? Now add your blazing red hair to this assortment of proof, and you can nearly hear the whispers intensifying, the doubt solidifying into assurance. Your lovely hair, which should be praised as nature's craftsmanship, has become a signal drawing the most hazardous sort of notice in a time where differing could mean demise. As you meticulously tuck every strand of red hair under your headscarf, you comprehend that even your most fundamental bodily features have been turned into weapons against you by dread and bias. You grasp for your needle with your left hand, the action feeling as instinctive as respiration. But the instant your fingers clasp the implement, you recognize you've just performed what medieval society deems a literally ominous deed. The term sinister itself derives from the Latin for left. And in this era of strict symbolism and spiritual reading, your left-handedness labels you as inherently flawed, morally tainted, and quite likely allied with the devil. The medieval Christian outlook split the cosmos into ideal cosmic balances: virtue against vice, illumination against obscurity, God's right hand against Satan's left. You learn that your innate preference for your left hand positions you solidly on the incorrect side of this spiritual balance, turning every motion you make into a possible assertion of loyalty to shadows. When you make the sign of the cross or extend toward sacred items with your left hand, watchers see this as ridicule or perversion of holy rites. You bear the load of scriptural interpretation pressing down on your mere inclination for left-handed action. Holy texts repeatedly stress God's right hand as the source of authority and grace, while the left side grows linked with condemnation and damnation. When Jesus described dividing the sheep from the goats, he situated the blessed on his right and the damned on his left. Your dominant hand has literally placed you among the condemned in the opinions of medieval theologians. The practical difficulties of being left-handed in a right-handed society compound your otherworldly doubts. Medieval instruments from farming tools to writing devices were crafted for right-handed users. Your clumsy adjustments to employ these tools seem awkward and unnatural, implying you're resisting God's planned design for humankind. When you thrive despite these barriers, watchers presume you're obtaining otherworldly aid to surmount your innate drawback. You learn that medieval health theory supplied apparently scientific accounts for left-handedness that only amplified doubt about your nature. Doctors taught that right-handedness showed proper equilibrium of bodily fluids, while left-handedness implied corruption or ailment impacting typical growth. Your preference becomes a diagnostic indicator of inner spiritual or bodily sickness that might spread to others. Scholars continue to debate if the oppression of left-handed people stemmed from authentic spiritual belief or acted as a handy identifier for pinpointing societal outsiders who could be readily blamed during crises. The comparatively uncommon incidence of left-handedness, impacting about 10% of the populace, made left-handed individuals noticeable minorities who stood out in ways that invited mistrust. Your writing grows especially problematic when you're literate enough to possess books or produce documents. Medieval writing styles were designed for right-handed scribes, flowing left to right in manners that left-handed writers naturally smear and warp. Your script looks distinct, more strained, sometimes even tilting in unnatural paths. These visual variances in your handwriting imply you might be scripting in mystical scripts or embedding otherworldly messages. The eating customs of medieval culture create daily chances for your left-handedness to seem ominous. When you reach for bread with your left hand during shared meals, you're symbolically extending with Satan's hand toward Christ's form. Your innate gestures during prayer, making the cross, reaching for religious artifacts, or motioning while talking all bear the wrong spiritual direction when done with your dominant left hand. You recognize that even your household tasks become signs of otherworldly taint. When you mix cooking vessels with your left hand, dubious watchers note if you stir clockwise, tracing the sun's course in God's order, or counterclockwise, tracing the devil's reverse path. Your innate stirring pattern, dictated by hand preference rather than spiritual loyalty, becomes scrutinized for proof of your true otherworldly allegiances. The martial ramifications of your left-handedness add another stratum of doubt. In blade combat and warfare, left-handed warriors hold innate edges because foes anticipate right-handed strikes. Your triumph in physical clashes seems otherworldly to those who don't comprehend the strategic benefits of unforeseen angles and unfamiliar guard patterns. Victory gained through left-handed combat technique looks like fiendish aid to medieval perspectives. Your left-handedness influences how others read your every gesture and facial look. When you point with your left hand, you're directing focus using Satan's favored limb. When you wave or gesture vigorously during discussion, the ominous nature of your dominant hand makes these movements seem menacing or corrupted. Even unconscious habits like scratching your nose or brushing hair from your face become questionable when executed with the wrong hand. The creative and craft output you generate with your left hand bears visual indicators that reveal your handedness to skilled examiners. Your brush marks in artwork, your sewing patterns in embroidery, and your carving methods in woodcraft all flow in directions that appear unnatural to right-handed viewers. These unique patterns in your artistic work become signatures that identify you as left-handed, even when you're not there. You can nearly sense how your left-handedness shapes the reading of your other dubious traits. That birthmark we discussed earlier becomes more ominous when you indicate it with your left hand. Your plant expertise appears more fiendish when you blend medicines with Satan's favored appendage. Your red hair seems more blazing when you run your left hand through it, and your black cat appears more otherworldly when you pet her with the devil's own hand. The communal pressure to suppress your innate left-handedness creates its own issues. When you compel yourself to use your right hand for key tasks, your execution seems clumsy and unnatural, implying you're uneasy with godly pursuits. But when you excel at tasks using your natural left hand, this achievement proves your otherworldly talents. Either way, your handedness operates against you. The children around you learn early to fear and avoid left-handed gestures, with parents slapping small hands that reach with the wrong appendage. You watch as naturally left-handed children in your community are forced to convert to right-handed behavior through punishment and repetition, their natural preferences being literally beaten out of them for their spiritual safety. Even your sleep becomes suspect when observers notice which side you naturally favor for lying down, or which hand you unconsciously use to pull blankets over yourself during the night. Your most basic unconscious behaviors carry spiritual implications that you never intended but cannot escape. As you deliberately switch your needle to your right hand and struggle through the awkward motions of forced dexterity, you understand how even the most fundamental aspects of your physical being have been transformed into evidence against your soul. You stand before your large wooden vats, observing the barley mash ferment and bubble with the enigmatic alchemy that turns simple grains into nourishing ale. Unaware that this ancient feminine craft, brewing, has become one of the most perilous activities a woman can engage in during medieval Europe. Your expertise in creating the daily beverage that sustains entire communities has somehow shifted from vital household skill into condemning proof of otherworldly knowledge and possible sorcery. The irony strikes deep when you realize that brewing was originally viewed as such a naturally female realm that men seldom involved themselves in the process. For centuries, women had been the recognized masters of fermentation, grasping the delicate equilibrium of components, timing, and temperature that produces fine ale from basic grains. Your mothers and grandmothers transmitted brewing secrets across generations, forming a female tradition of knowledge that predates Christianity and supported entire civilizations. You discover that the shift of brewing from esteemed craft to dubious activity occurred gradually as economic and social forces began reshaping medieval society. As brewing grew more profitable and commercialized, male guild members started coveting what had always been women's domain. Your success as a brewer didn't just challenge social norms, it threatened economic competition from men who wanted to dominate this increasingly lucrative trade. The brewing process itself appears otherworldly to those who don't understand the science of fermentation. You watch grain and water transform into an intoxicating drink through what seems like magic, but is actually the work of wild yeasts converting sugars into alcohol. Your ability to anticipate when fermentation will finish, to know by aroma and flavor whether a batch is advancing correctly, and to adjust ingredients to produce consistently good ale appears to require supernatural insight to observers unfamiliar with brewing chemistry. Your tools and ingredients become reinterpreted as magical practices when viewed through suspicious eyes. The large cauldrons you use for heating water and boiling grains resemble exactly the witches' cauldrons described in folklore. Your assortment of herbs and spices, hops for preservation, various plants for flavoring, honey for sweetening, looks like an apothecary's magical ingredients more than a brewer's stock to those seeking evidence of otherworldly activities. Scholars continue to debate whether the persecution of female brewers stemmed from genuine concern about sorcery or deliberate economic warfare aimed at removing women from profitable brewing enterprises. The timing of increased suspicion toward brewing women aligns dubiously with the rise of male-dominated brewing guilds and the commercialization of ale production. You realize that your knowledge of fermentation timing aligns dangerously with supposed witching activities. Brewing requires attention at specific times, checking fermentation progress during dawn and dusk hours, adjusting temperatures at night when the air is cooler, and harvesting wild yeast during particular weather conditions. These practical necessities match exactly with the times when witches were believed to be most active, making your legitimate work schedule appear like a supernatural timetable. The intoxicating effects of your product create additional suspicion about your intentions. Ale and beer alter consciousness, loosening tongues and changing behavior in ways that medieval minds associated with otherworldly influence. Your ability to create beverages that make people act differently suggests you possess power over human minds and souls. When men drink your ale and behave badly afterward, you become responsible for their moral corruption rather than their poor judgment. Your success at brewing creates the same impossible situation you've encountered before. Competence becomes evidence of otherworldly assistance. When your ale tastes better than your neighbor's, when your brewing consistently yields good results while others fail, when you rarely lose batches to spoilage or contamination, observers assume you're receiving demonic help rather than applying superior knowledge and technique. The communal nature of brewing adds another layer of suspicion to your activities. Brewing often required group effort, women assisting each other during harvest time, sharing equipment and expertise, gathering together for the labor-intensive work of malting and fermenting. These assemblies of women working together on mysterious transformation processes looked exactly like descriptions of witches' covens in popular imagination. You notice how your brewing activities affect your relationship with the church. Alcohol had complicated religious implications, blessed as part of communion, but condemned when it led to excess and sin. Your role as creator of intoxicating beverages places you in an ambiguous spiritual position, providing communion wine for religious ceremonies while also enabling the sinful behavior that drinking could encourage. The seasonal nature of brewing creates additional problems. The best brewing conditions occur during specific times of year when temperatures and humidity levels optimize fermentation. Your increased activity during these optimal brewing seasons, often coinciding with traditional harvest festivals and seasonal celebrations that the church was trying to suppress, makes your work appear connected to pagan ritual cycles rather than practical agricultural timing. Your brewing knowledge includes understanding of water quality, grain varieties, and preservation techniques that seem impossibly sophisticated to observers who don't share your expertise. Your ability to determine which water sources produce the best ale, to identify grain diseases that will ruin batches, and to predict how long different ales will remain drinkable appears to require supernatural foresight rather than accumulated experience and careful observation. The equipment modifications you make to improve your brewing process look like magical apparatus to unfamiliar eyes. Your innovations, better straining methods, improved fermentation vessels, techniques for controlling temperature demonstrate creative problem-solving that medieval minds might attribute to demonic inspiration rather than human ingenuity. You can almost taste the bitterness of irony when you realize that communities desperately needed your brewing skills. Ale was safer to drink than water in many medieval locations, providing essential nutrition and calories, especially during winter months when fresh food was scarce. Yet, the very people who depended on your product for survival simultaneously suspected you of using supernatural methods to create it. Do you remember your accumulating evidence? The birthmark, the solitary life, the herbal knowledge, the black cat, the red hair, the left-handedness? Now add your expertise at brewing, and you've created what medieval prosecutors would consider an almost perfect witch profile. Your ability to transform simple ingredients into complex, intoxicating beverages using knowledge passed down through generations of women becomes the final piece in a puzzle that spells doom. As you carefully tend your fermenting ale, monitoring the bubbling that means your batch is progressing correctly, you understand how expertise itself has become a form of evidence against you, and how the very skills that make you valuable to your community could ultimately destroy you. You stand at the river's edge, your heart racing as the crowd assembles behind you, their voices swelling in a blend of thrill and fear. The water ordeal lies ahead, that distorted logic of medieval justice that will decide your guilt or innocence based simply on whether you sink or float. You grasp with sharp clarity that you're confronting an impossible dilemma: drown as an innocent or survive and be executed as a confirmed witch. The water that once sustained your community has turned into a tool of death, masked as divine verdict. The doctrinal basis for water trials exposes the medieval mind's frantic effort to allow God to resolve what human courts couldn't ascertain via proof. Church leaders taught that water sanctified by God and employed in baptism would inherently repel anything impure. If you floated, it signified the holy element was repelling your tainted form, confirming your culpability. If you sank and drowned, the water embraced you as pure, a posthumous clearance that would solace your mourning kin but offer little to your remains. You sense the coarse, hemp cord binding your limbs as the executioner describes the method with detached professionalism. Your thumbs will be secured to your opposite big toes, forming a posture that renders swimming infeasible while supposedly permitting an innocent to sink naturally. The throng observes with the same eagerness they'd exhibit at a fair, their amusement furnished by your potential demise. The historical evolution of trial by ordeal illustrates how the quest for assurance led to progressively intricate ways of compelling divine involvement. When witness accounts proved unreliable and tangible proof stayed scarce, medieval courts resorted to ordeals that purportedly forced God to disclose truth via wondrous signs. Your trial embodies the utmost manifestation of this defective reasoning, requiring the Almighty to intervene personally in local quarrels. You learned that the setup for your water trial involves ceremonies meant to guarantee divine engagement. Priests consecrate the water with supplications and holy oils, converting a common river or pond into a sacred proving ground. Your body might be consecrated too, supposedly assuring that God will plainly show your innocence if you merit redemption. These ceremonies supply spiritual spectacle that makes spectators believe they're beholding authentic divine judgment rather than human brutality. Scholars continue to debate if water trials were crafted with intentional prejudice toward guilt, or if medieval officials truly thought they were devising equitable tests of purity. The physical truths of the trial certainly lean toward drowning. Bound persons hurled into water seldom endure, regardless of their spiritual standing. But the regularity with which accused witches manage to float implies either otherworldly meddling or human tampering with outcomes. You recognize that your physique influences your survival odds in ways that medieval minds ascribe to spiritual rather than bodily causes. Individuals with higher body fat tend to float more readily, while slender ones sink quicker. Your diet, your fitness, even your breathing in the instants before immersion all affect whether you'll float or sink. But watchers read these biological elements as signs of your spiritual condition. The crowd's anticipations mold how they perceive what they see. Spectators come already persuaded of your guilt or innocence based on your standing, your looks, and the charges against you. These preconceptions shape what they assert to witness during the trial. Witnesses might vow you floated when you actually sank or maintain you sank when you plainly bobbed on the surface, depending on what result they anticipate from someone with your traits. Your survival drives operate against you during the ordeal. Innate human reactions to drowning, struggling against restraints, trying to keep your head afloat, battling for breath can be seen as proof that the water is rejecting your wicked body. But embracing death passively might be viewed as confirmation that you're employing otherworldly powers to manipulate the trial's result. There's literally no way to behave during a water trial that won't be interpreted as suspicious by those determined to find you guilty. The seasonal timing of water trials adds another layer of complexity to their interpretation. Cold water increases your chances of sinking quickly as your body loses buoyancy and your muscles cramp from temperature shock. Warm water might help you float more easily, but it also means you'll survive longer to be condemned as guilty. The weather conditions on your trial day become part of the divine message that observers claim to read in your performance. You can almost feel how your other suspicious characteristics influence the crowd's interpretation of your water trial. That red hair, marking you as fiery and passionate, makes spectators expect you to struggle violently against drowning. Your knowledge of herbs suggests you might have taken substances to affect your buoyancy. Your black cat watching from the riverbank appears to be using supernatural powers to influence your trial's outcome through telepathic communication. The legal procedures surrounding water trials reveal their fundamental unfairness. If you float and survive, you face immediate execution as a proven witch. If you sink and drown, your death serves as retroactive proof of innocence, but your family receives no compensation for the loss of an innocent person. The trial creates outcomes where authorities never have to admit error. Every result confirms the wisdom of their decision to proceed with the ordeal. Your final moments before entering the water become a stage for religious theater. Priests offer last rites and opportunities for confession, encouraging you to admit your guilt and seek salvation before facing divine judgment. Your responses to these spiritual preparations are analyzed for evidence of your true nature. Too much religious fervor suggests you're trying to manipulate God, while insufficient piety proves your corruption. The physical sensation of hitting the water, feeling the cold liquid close over your head while your bound limbs prevent normal swimming motions, represents the ultimate helplessness of your situation. You understand viscerally that your fate depends not on justice, evidence, or divine intervention, but on unpredictable physical factors, crowd psychology, and the predetermined biases of those observing your ordeal. Do you remember all that evidence accumulating against you? The birthmarks, the independence, the healing knowledge, the black cat, the red hair, the left-handedness, the brewing expertise. The water trial represents the moment when all those suspicions crystallize into a binary judgment that will either vindicate or condemn everything about your existence. As the cold water embraces your struggling body, you realize that you're not being tested by God, but by the fears, prejudices, and desperate need for certainty of a community that has transformed survival itself into evidence of guilt. You cradle your fourth healthy baby in your arms, gazing down at the perfect little face that represents everything wonderful about successful motherhood. Yet you understand with growing dread that your very success at bringing children safely into the world has now become one of your most damning pieces of evidence. In medieval Europe, where infant and maternal mortality claimed enormous numbers of lives, your ability to survive multiple pregnancies and deliver healthy babies appears suspiciously supernatural to those seeking explanations for your remarkable fortune. The stark statistics of medieval childbirth make your success appear miraculous in the most dangerous sense. Historical records suggest that maternal mortality rates ranged from 5 to 25% per pregnancy, meaning that women who bore multiple children faced cumulative risks that should have claimed their lives. Your survival through 4 successful births places you in a statistical minority so small that observers assume supernatural intervention must explain your continued existence. You feel the weight of your community's stares as they calculate the improbability of your reproductive success. When your neighbors lose babies to stillbirth, childhood diseases, or birthing complications while yours thrive and grow strong, their grief transforms into suspicion about the source of your protection. Your healthy children become evidence that you've made bargains with dark forces, trading your soul for your family's safety in ways that godly women wouldn't consider. The medieval understanding of pregnancy and childbirth was deeply intertwined with religious beliefs about women's spiritual status. The Church taught that childbirth pain was divine punishment for Eve's original sin, making any woman who seemed to experience easier labors or faster recovery suspect of circumventing God's intended suffering. Your ability to bounce back quickly from childbirth, to maintain your strength through multiple pregnancies, suggests you're avoiding the spiritual purification that other women must endure. You discover that even your knowledge of childbirth practices works against you. Your understanding of positionings and breathing techniques, herbal preparations for easing labor pain, and postpartum care accumulated through successful experiences appears as supernatural wisdom to women struggling with their own pregnancies. When you offer advice that helps other mothers, your success rate makes your knowledge appear magical rather than experiential. Scholars continue to argue whether suspicion toward successful mothers represented genuine religious concern or reflected economic jealousy and social tensions around resource allocation. In communities where child mortality meant fewer mouths to feed and more inheritance for surviving children, your thriving family consumes resources that might otherwise be distributed among families with higher mortality rates. Your children's health and behavior become additional evidence of your supernatural status. When your babies cry less, sleep better, or develop more quickly than their peers, observers attribute these advantages to magical intervention rather than good genetics, adequate nutrition, or attentive parenting. Your children's success in avoiding childhood diseases that claim other youngsters suggests they're protected by forces beyond normal maternal care. The timing of your pregnancies creates opportunities for additional suspicion. If you conceive easily when trying for children, this suggests supernatural fertility enhancement. If you avoid pregnancy when you don't want more children, this implies knowledge of contraceptive magic that virtuous women shouldn't possess. Your ability to space your children at reasonable intervals appears to demonstrate control over biological processes that should be left to divine providence. You realize that your behavior during pregnancy itself provides fodder for supernatural theories. Your ability to continue working, to maintain good spirits, to avoid the extreme sickness and weakness that affect many pregnant women, makes your condition appear unnaturally easy. When other women suffer through difficult pregnancies while you remain active and healthy, your resilience suggests demonic support rather than constitutional strength. The birthing process becomes a public performance where your pain responses are analyzed for authenticity and appropriate spiritual significance. If you scream too little during labor, you're suspected of using magical pain relief that interferes with God's intended punishment. If you scream too much, you might be accused of theatrical deception designed to hide your supernatural assistance. There's no correct way to experience childbirth that won't be interpreted suspiciously by those already convinced of your guilt. Your relationship with midwives and other birth attendants becomes complicated by your success rate. Midwives who assist at your successful births might gain suspicious reputations themselves, accused of learning magical techniques from you or participating in supernatural rituals. Alternatively, they might distance themselves from you, refusing to attend your births and thereby forcing you into even more suspicious circumstances of delivering alone or with only family assistance. The postpartum period provides additional opportunities for supernatural interpretation of normal biological processes. Your ability to produce sufficient breast milk, to recover your strength quickly, to avoid the infections and complications that claim many new mothers all suggest protection that goes beyond normal human resilience. When you nurse your babies successfully while other mothers struggle with milk production or nursing difficulties, your success appears magical. You can almost feel how your reproductive success amplifies all your other suspicious characteristics. That birthmark that marked you from birth now appears to be Satan's seal on a woman he's chosen to protect through multiple dangerous pregnancies. Your herbal knowledge becomes interpreted as magical fertility enhancement and contraceptive wisdom. Your black cat seems to be a familiar spirit, ensuring your children's supernatural protection. The survival of all your children into healthy childhood creates an impossibly suspicious situation. In an era when families expected to lose multiple children to disease, accident, or malnutrition, your complete success appears to violate natural law. When plague, pox, or childhood fevers sweep through your community, claiming other people's babies while yours remain healthy, your family's protection suggests supernatural intervention that comes at a terrible spiritual cost. Your maternal instincts and protective behaviors toward your children get reinterpreted through supernatural lenses. Your ability to sense when your children are in danger, to know intuitively when they are becoming ill, to predict their needs and respond appropriately, all appear to demonstrate psychic connections that exceed normal maternal bonds. Your fierce protectiveness toward your offspring suggests you're defending supernatural investments rather than expressing natural maternal love. The economic implications of your successful childbearing create additional resentment in communities struggling with resource scarcity. Your healthy, thriving children will grow up to compete for limited opportunities, inherit family resources, and potentially outcompete the children of less successful mothers. Your reproductive success threatens the prospects of other families in ways that generate genuine hostility disguised as spiritual concern. As you hold your healthy baby close, feeling the strong heartbeat and steady breathing that prove this child's vitality, you understand that even the most fundamental biological success, creating and sustaining life, has been transformed into evidence of supernatural corruption in a world where fear overwhelms joy. You carefully trace the letters across the parchment, your finger following words that flow like poetry across the page, completely absorbed in the magical act of reading that has transported countless souls through stories and knowledge across centuries. But in medieval Europe, your literacy, this ability to decode mysterious symbols and transform them into meaning, has just marked you as dangerously educated in an age when learning itself could be considered a form of witchcraft, especially for someone of your gender and social status. The medieval world maintained strict hierarchies around who should possess the power of literacy. Reading and writing were primarily the domain of male clergy, nobles, and merchants, with women's education carefully controlled and limited to religious texts when permitted at all. Your ability to read suggests you've somehow gained access to knowledge that wasn't intended for someone like you, raising immediate questions about how you acquired these forbidden skills and what dangerous texts you might have encountered. You feel the weight of suspicious stares when neighbors notice you examining written documents or see books among your possessions. In a largely illiterate society, your literacy makes you as unusual and potentially threatening as someone with supernatural powers. The ability to access knowledge through reading appears almost magical to those who can't decode written symbols, making your intellectual capabilities seem as mysterious and dangerous as spellcasting. The Church's complicated relationship with literacy creates additional problems for educated women like you. While Christianity valued literacy for reading scripture, religious authorities worried about unsupervised reading that might lead to heretical interpretations or exposure to forbidden knowledge. Your ability to read means you could potentially access texts that challenge orthodox teaching or provide information about practices the Church wanted to suppress. You discover that the very books in your possession become evidence of supernatural interests. If you own religious texts, critics assume you're studying them to pervert their meaning or learn counterspells against holy power. If you possess secular literature stories, poetry, or practical manuals, these suggest worldly concerns that distract from proper spiritual focus. Medical or herbal texts are particularly damning, as they imply you're studying magical formulas disguised as healing knowledge. Scholars still argue whether the persecution of literate women represented genuine concern about religious orthodoxy or reflected broader social anxieties about educated females, challenging traditional power structures. The timing of increased suspicion toward learned women coincides with periods of social upheaval, when established authorities felt most threatened by alternative sources of knowledge and influence. Your handwriting itself becomes a form of evidence when you create written documents. Medieval scripts required extensive training to master properly, making your writing style a signature that reveals your educational background. If your penmanship appears too skilled, observers wonder where you received such sophisticated training. If it seems crude or unusual, they assume you're attempting to write in magical alphabets or encode supernatural messages. The content of anything you write faces intense scrutiny for hidden meanings and dangerous implications. Your personal letters might be analyzed for coded references to magical practices. Your household accounts could be interpreted as records of ingredient purchases for spellcasting. Even devotional writing gets examined for subtle heresies or evidence that you're mocking religious practices rather than genuinely participating in them. You realize that your literacy affects how others interpret your speech and conversation. Your vocabulary, enriched by reading, includes words and concepts that seem suspiciously sophisticated for someone of your social position. When you reference ideas from books or use language that demonstrates broad knowledge, listeners assume you're quoting from forbidden texts rather than displaying the natural results of extensive reading. Your ability to quote religious passages from memory becomes particularly problematic. If you recite scripture accurately, critics might claim you've memorized these texts for blasphemous purposes, planning to pervert their meaning in magical rituals. If you make small errors in quotation, this proves you're deliberately corrupting holy words to serve evil purposes. Your biblical knowledge becomes evidence against you, regardless of how you demonstrate it. The teaching aspects of your literacy create additional dangers. When other women ask you to read letters aloud or help them understand written documents, your willingness to share knowledge appears to be spreading dangerous learning beyond its proper boundaries. Your informal education of others suggests you're building a network of accomplices or disciples who will help you in supernatural activities. You can almost taste the irony that your literacy might include the ability to read the very accusations being written against you, understanding the legal documents that condemn you, being able to follow the theological arguments that justify your persecution, reading the testimonies that seal your fate. Your education makes you uniquely qualified to understand the intellectual framework being used to destroy you. Your reading habits themselves become suspect when neighbors observe your behavior. If you read during daylight hours, you're neglecting proper domestic duties to pursue dangerous knowledge. If you read by candlelight after dark, you're engaging in secretive activities that honest people wouldn't need to hide. Your timing and location for reading always suggests something sinister to those seeking evidence of your guilt. The books you don't own become as suspicious as those you do possess. If you lack certain expected religious texts, this proves your impiety. If you're missing practical manuals that most households require, observers assume you don't need written instructions because you possess supernatural knowledge that makes books unnecessary. Your library always provides evidence against you, whether through its contents or its omissions. Your literacy enables you to stay informed about current events, legal developments, and intellectual trends in ways that can appear prophetic to less educated neighbors. When you predict political changes because you've read about developing situations or anticipate legal modifications, because you understand written announcements, your foresight seems supernatural rather than simply well-informed. The social isolation that often accompanies extensive reading creates additional suspicion about your activities. Time spent alone with books means time away from community supervision, providing opportunities for secret practices that no one can witness or verify. Your preference for intellectual pursuits over social gatherings suggests you're pursuing interests that can't bear public scrutiny. Do you remember how your accumulating evidence has been building? The birthmark, the independence, the herbal knowledge, the black cat, the red hair, the left-handedness, the brewing skills, the suspicious survival of water trials, the successful childbearing. Now add literacy to this collection, and you've created what medieval authorities would consider an almost perfect profile of a dangerous educated witch whose knowledge makes her a threat to established order. As you close your book and carefully hide it away from prying eyes, you understand that even the most noble human achievement, the ability to preserve and share knowledge through written language, has been transformed into another weapon aimed at your destruction. You step outside your cottage and feel the subtle shift in air pressure. Notice how the birds have grown quiet. Observe the particular quality of light that tells you a storm approaches within the next few hours. Your ability to read nature's signs and predict weather changes, knowledge that helps your community prepare for rain, wind, or dangerous conditions, has become twisted into evidence that you don't simply forecast the weather, but actually control it through supernatural means. The medieval mind struggled to distinguish between prediction and causation when it came to weather phenomena. Your accurate forecasts of approaching storms, your warnings about dangerous winds, and your ability to advise neighbors when to bring in laundry or secure livestock appear to demonstrate power over natural forces rather than careful observation of atmospheric signs. When your predictions prove correct time after time, observers assume you're not reading nature, but commanding it. You feel the weight of responsibility that comes with weather knowledge in agricultural communities where storms can destroy crops, floods can ruin harvests, and unexpected weather can mean the difference between survival and starvation. Your neighbors depend on your forecasts to make crucial decisions about farming, travel, and daily activities. But this very dependence makes them suspicious about the source of your meteorological abilities. The ancient traditions of weather prediction that you've inherited from generations of observant ancestors become reinterpreted as magical practices in Christian medieval Europe. Your grandmother's teachings about cloud formations, wind patterns, and animal behaviors that signal weather changes are now viewed as supernatural knowledge passed down through family lines of witches, rather than accumulated wisdom from centuries of careful observation. You discover that your weather predictions create impossible social dynamics. When you warn people about approaching bad weather and they heed your advice, avoiding disaster, your accuracy proves your supernatural abilities. When people ignore your warnings and suffer the consequences you predicted, this demonstrates your power to cause harm to those who don't respect your authority. Either way, your meteorological knowledge works against you. Scholars still argue whether weather prediction was genuinely feared as witchcraft or whether accusations served more practical purposes, such as providing scapegoats for agricultural disasters or eliminating people who possessed knowledge that made them too influential in communities dependent on farming and weather patterns. Your understanding of seasonal patterns and long-term weather trends appears prophetic to those who don't recognize the natural cycles you've learned to interpret. When you predict harsh winters based on early signs, wet springs from late fall indicators, or drought conditions from subtle atmospheric changes, your foresight seems to exceed normal human capabilities. Your ability to advise on planting times and harvest schedules based on weather patterns suggests supernatural communication with forces that control agricultural success. The tools and methods you use for weather observation become evidence of magical practices. Your practice of watching cloud formations might be interpreted as divination through sky reading. Your attention to wind direction changes appears to be communication with air spirits. Even your habit of noting how domestic animals behave before weather changes suggests you're consulting familiar spirits who report atmospheric conditions from the supernatural realm. You realize that your weather knowledge intersects dangerously with folk beliefs about witches' abilities to control storms, summon winds, and influence rainfall. When unexpected severe weather strikes after you've had conflicts with neighbors, they assume you've called down meteorological revenge, rather than recognizing that weather patterns don't respond to human emotions or social disputes. Your accuracy in predicting specific weather phenomena creates particular suspicion. When you forecast not just that rain will come, but that it will arrive at particular times with specific intensity, your precision appears to exceed natural prediction abilities. Your detailed forecasts about storm duration, wind strength, or temperature changes suggest you're working from supernatural information sources rather than observational experience. The timing of your weather predictions aligns suspiciously with accusations about when witches practice their craft. Your most accurate forecasts often come from observations made during dawn and dusk hours when atmospheric conditions are most revealing. Your nighttime attention to weather signs necessary because many changes occur during darkness matches exactly with supposed times of supernatural activity. You can almost feel how your meteorological knowledge amplifies interpretations of your other suspicious characteristics. That red hair appears more connected to fire and storms when you accurately predict lightning. Your herbal knowledge seems more magical when you know which weather conditions will affect plant growth. Your black cat becomes a weather-controlling familiar when she exhibits behaviors that you recognize as responses to barometric pressure changes. Your ability to sense weather changes through physical symptoms, the way your joints ache before rain, how your skin feels different when humidity rises, the headaches that precede pressure drops, appears supernatural to those who don't experience such sensitivity. Your body's responses to atmospheric conditions suggest you're physically connected to weather systems in ways that exceed normal human experience. The protective advice you offer based on weather knowledge creates additional problems. When you warn people to avoid travel during dangerous conditions, your caution might be seen as an attempt to isolate potential victims for supernatural attack. When you suggest protective measures against coming storms, your preparations appear to be magical rituals designed to shield yourself while allowing others to suffer weather-related harm. Your weather predictions affect community planning in ways that give you influence over group decisions about farming, travel, and resource allocation. This practical power makes you valuable but also threatening to established authorities who prefer that important community decisions flow through official channels rather than depending on your meteorological insights. The economic implications of accurate weather forecasting create additional tensions. Your ability to help some people protect their crops or livestock while others suffer weather-related losses appears to demonstrate favoritism that could only be explained by supernatural intervention. When those who follow your advice prosper, while those who ignore it suffer losses, your weather knowledge becomes a form of economic control that threatens community stability. Your understanding of how weather affects human health and behavior, knowing that certain conditions trigger illnesses, influence moods, or affect physical comfort, makes your medical knowledge appear more supernatural. Your ability to predict when people will feel unwell based on approaching weather systems suggests you're not just forecasting atmospheric conditions, but planning to cause illness through weather magic. The seasonal cycles that govern your weather predictions align with traditional pagan celebrations that the church was trying to suppress. Your knowledge of when conditions favor certain agricultural activities connects you to pre-Christian farming rituals, while your understanding of weather patterns links you to ancient nature worship that medieval Christianity viewed as demonic. As you watch storm clouds gathering exactly as you predicted they would, you understand that even humanity's most practical need, knowing what weather to expect, has been transformed into evidence of supernatural power in a world where knowledge itself has become dangerous. You feel the familiar tingling sensation beginning in your left hand, the warning sign that always precedes one of your seizures. And you understand with crystal terror that in medieval Europe, your epilepsy, this neurological condition that you can't control or prevent, has just transformed you from a person suffering from illness into a vessel for demonic possession. Your body's electrical misfirings, which modern medicine explains through brain chemistry and neural pathways, become interpreted as evidence that evil spirits are literally fighting for control of your soul. The medieval understanding of seizures and neurological disorders relied heavily on supernatural explanations for phenomena that seem to transcend normal human experience. When your body convulses beyond your conscious control, when your eyes roll back and your speech becomes incomprehensible. When you lose awareness of your surroundings and emerge from seizures confused and exhausted, observers interpret these symptoms as clear evidence that otherworldly forces are temporarily inhabiting your physical form. You feel the social isolation that accompanies your condition as neighbors increasingly avoid contact with someone they believe might be contagious with spiritual corruption. Your seizures make you unpredictable and frightening to people who don't understand what's happening inside your brain, creating a circle of fear around you that grows wider with each episode that witnesses observe. The timing of your seizures becomes particularly problematic when they occur during religious services, community gatherings, or other public events where your condition can be interpreted as demonic protest against holy activities. The Church's teachings about possession and spiritual warfare provide seemingly authoritative explanations for your neurological symptoms. Religious authorities describe demonic possession in terms that align perfectly with seizure behaviors, loss of conscious control, speaking in unknown languages, superhuman strength during episodes, and apparent communication with invisible entities. Your condition fits so precisely into these theological categories that arguing for natural causes appears to be denying obvious spiritual reality. You discover that any unusual behaviors or symptoms you experience between seizures become reinterpreted as evidence of ongoing supernatural influence. The auras that warn you of approaching episodes, strange smells, visual disturbances, or emotional changes appear to be psychic communications from demonic sources. Your post-seizure confusion, memory gaps, and physical exhaustion suggest that evil forces have been using your body for supernatural activities that you can't remember. Scholars still argue whether medieval authorities genuinely believed neurological disorders represented demonic activity or whether these interpretations provided convenient justifications for eliminating people whose conditions made them social burdens or whose seizure-related behaviors threatened community stability. Your attempts to manage your condition through rest, diet, or herbal remedies become evidence of magical practices designed to communicate with possessing spirits. When you recognize warning signs and try to find safe places for seizures, your preparation appears to be arranging private meetings with demons. When you use traditional remedies that sometimes reduce seizure frequency, your medical knowledge seems to be supernatural negotiation with evil forces. The physical symptoms of your seizures align disturbingly well with contemporary descriptions of witchcraft activities. Your convulsions resemble the writhing movements attributed to demonic ecstasy, while your unconsciousness, during episodes, appears to be times when your soul travels to supernatural realms. The strength you sometimes display during seizures, thrashing that requires multiple people to restrain you, suggests possession by entities with superhuman power. Your speech during and after seizures provides particularly damning evidence to those seeking proof of supernatural activity. The incomprehensible sounds you make during episodes are interpreted as demonic languages or magical incantations. If you cry out recognizable words, these might be seen as blasphemous statements or supernatural predictions. Your post-seizure confusion, when you struggle to remember where you are or what's happening, appears to be disorientation from returning to the physical world after demonic journeys. You realize that your seizure triggers stress, lack of sleep, certain foods, or environmental factors become interpreted as evidence that demons respond to specific summoning conditions. When seizures occur during times of community tension or personal conflict, observers assume evil spirits are reacting to social discord or that you're calling upon supernatural assistance during difficult situations. Your condition affects how others interpret your personality and behavior during normal seizure-free periods. Your need for adequate rest makes you appear lazy or withdrawn from proper social participation. Your careful attention to diet and lifestyle factors that might trigger episodes appears to be maintenance of magical practices rather than medical self-care. Your knowledge about your own condition seems suspiciously sophisticated for someone who should be merely suffering from divine punishment or demonic affliction. The hereditary aspects of some neurological conditions create additional problems for your family members. If relatives also experience seizures or similar symptoms, this suggests your bloodline carries supernatural corruption that passes through generations. Your children might face suspicion even if they never develop neurological symptoms, simply because they share your potentially cursed heritage. You can almost feel how your seizure disorder amplifies interpretations of all your other suspicious characteristics. That birthmark becomes Satan's seal on a body he regularly inhabits, while your herbal knowledge appears to be medical information provided by demonic spirits. Your black cat seems to be a familiar that helps summon possessing entities, while your weather prediction abilities suggest supernatural communication during seizure-induced travels to other realms. The unpredictable timing of your seizures creates impossible social situations. When episodes occur during religious activities, they appear to be demonic protests against holy practices. When they happen during community celebrations, they seem to be supernatural disruptions of godly joy. When seizures strike during times of crisis or decision-making, observers interpret them as evil interventions designed to prevent good outcomes or community unity. Your medical needs during and after seizures require care and understanding that become increasingly difficult to obtain as supernatural interpretations of your condition spread. People fear touching you during episodes, worried about spiritual contamination from contact with a possessed body. Your recovery needs, quiet rest, protection from injury, patient assistance as awareness returns, become viewed as special treatment for someone in league with evil forces. The cyclical nature of your neurological condition creates patterns that observers interpret as supernatural schedules. If your seizures follow identifiable triggers or seasonal patterns, these appear to be appointments for demonic meetings rather than medical phenomena. Your periods of wellness between episodes suggest times when possessing spirits are away on other supernatural business rather than simply reflecting the natural progression of your neurological disorder. As you feel another seizure approaching and desperately seek a safe place where your convulsions won't be witnessed and interpreted as evidence of witchcraft, you understand that even involuntary medical conditions have been weaponized against you in an age where illness itself could be considered proof of spiritual corruption. You find yourself muttering quietly as you work in your garden, talking through the day's tasks and thinking aloud about which herbs need watering, completely unaware that your perfectly normal habit of speaking to yourself has become one of the most damning pieces of evidence against you in medieval Europe. Your solitary conversations, those internal dialogues that every human being conducts throughout their daily activities, are now interpreted as clear proof that you're communicating with invisible demonic companions who guide your supernatural activities. The medieval worldview struggled to understand why anyone would speak when no human listeners were present, defaulting to supernatural explanations for behavior that modern psychology recognizes as completely normal. Your habit of thinking out loud while working, planning your activities verbally, or simply talking to fill the silence of your solitary existence appears to observers as evidence that you're receiving instructions from evil spirits or reporting on your activities to unseen demonic supervisors. You feel the weight of constant observation as neighbors strain to overhear your private conversations, analyzing every word you speak alone for evidence of supernatural communication. Your innocent comments about daily tasks get reinterpreted as magical incantations, while your expressions of frustration or worry become pleas for demonic assistance. Even your habit of humming or singing while you work transforms into evidence that you're chanting supernatural formulas. The content of your solitary speech becomes forensically examined for hidden meanings and dangerous implications. When you talk yourself through complex tasks, reminding yourself of steps in brewing, organizing your thoughts about herb preparation, or planning your day's activities, observers assume you're receiving detailed instructions from invisible advisors. Your verbal problem-solving appears to be supernatural consultation rather than normal human cognitive processing. You discover that different types of solitary speech create varying levels of suspicion among those watching for evidence of your supernatural activities. If you speak in your normal voice while alone, this suggests comfortable familiarity with demonic companions. If you whisper, you're obviously trying to hide supernatural conversations from human ears. If you speak more loudly, you might be communicating with spirits located at great distances or in other realms. Scholars still argue whether accusations based on solitary speech represented genuine belief in demonic communication or provided convenient evidence for authorities seeking to eliminate socially isolated individuals whose private behaviors couldn't be monitored and controlled through normal community supervision. Your responses to your own questions during internal dialogues become interpreted as evidence of two-way conversations with supernatural entities. When you ask yourself, "Where did I put that recipe?" and then answer, "Oh, it's in the wooden box," observers assume they're witnessing dialogue between you and helpful demons who assist with daily activities. Your natural tendency to argue with yourself about decisions appears to be negotiation with supernatural entities about supernatural services. The emotional content of your self-directed speech provides additional ammunition for those seeking proof of your guilt. When you express frustration with difficult tasks, observers interpret this as complaints to demonic assistants about inadequate supernatural help. When you encourage yourself through challenging work, this appears to be receiving motivational support from evil companions. Your expressions of satisfaction at completed tasks seem like gratitude directed toward invisible supernatural helpers. You realize that your habit of talking to animals, addressing your cat, speaking to farm animals, or commenting to birds in your garden gets lumped together with evidence of communication with familiar spirits. Your natural tendency to anthropomorphize creatures around you, speaking to them as if they understand, appears to be genuine conversation with demonic entities inhabiting animal forms. Your pet's responses to your voice become interpreted as supernatural communication rather than normal animal behavior. Your solitary prayers and religious expressions become particularly problematic when overheard by suspicious neighbors. If you pray aloud while alone, observers might assume you're mocking religious practices or perverting holy words for magical purposes. Your personal devotions, meant to demonstrate piety, instead provide evidence that you're comfortable speaking to invisible entities, a skill that could easily be transferred from communication with God to conversation with demons. The timing of your solitary speech creates additional suspicion about your supernatural activities. When you talk to yourself while working at dawn or dusk times when light conditions make observation difficult, this aligns perfectly with supposed periods of maximum supernatural activity. Your nighttime conversations, whether prayer, planning, or simple loneliness, appear to be scheduled meetings with demonic advisors who prefer darkness for their communications. You can almost taste the paranoia building around your most basic human need for verbal expression. Your solitary lifestyle, already suspicious, becomes even more threatening when combined with evidence that you maintain active conversational relationships with invisible companions. The isolation that makes self-directed speech necessary also makes it appear supernatural to those who don't understand the psychological benefits of verbal processing. Your habit of reading aloud while alone compounds suspicions about your supernatural communications. When you sound out written words to better understand complex texts, observers assume you're reciting magical formulas or receiving supernatural education from demonic tutors. Your vocal practice of religious passages appears to be learning blasphemous versions of holy words for use in evil rituals. The practical benefits of talking to yourself, organizing thoughts, working through problems, maintaining mental stimulation during solitary work, become twisted into evidence of supernatural assistance that gives you unfair advantages over neighbors who must rely solely on human intelligence. Your ability to think through complex issues verbally suggests you're consulting with entities whose knowledge exceeds normal human understanding. Your responses to stress or surprise, when you might exclaim or comment reflexively to yourself, provide additional evidence of supernatural communication. Your natural expressions of shock, frustration, or delight appear to be reports directed toward invisible observers who monitor your emotional states. Even your unconscious habit of saying, "Bless me," or "Lord, help me," during difficult moments gets interpreted as appeals to demonic rather than divine assistance. The social isolation that makes solitary speech necessary also means fewer witnesses who might provide alternative explanations for your behavior. Without friends or family members who can testify that talking to yourself is simply your normal habit, observers are free to interpret your conversations as evidence of supernatural relationships that confirm all their other suspicions about your character. Do you remember how your evidence has been accumulating? The birthmarks, independence, herbal knowledge, black cat, red hair, left-handedness, brewing skills, miraculous survival, successful motherhood, dangerous literacy, weather prediction, seizure disorder. Now add your habit of speaking to yourself, and you've created what medieval prosecutors would consider an almost perfect profile of someone in regular communication with evil spirits who guide every aspect of your supernatural existence. As you catch yourself murmuring plans for tomorrow's tasks and quickly fall silent, you understand that even the most basic human tendency toward verbal thought has been transformed into evidence of demonic conspiracy. You can't help but sway slightly to the rhythm in your head as you work, your feet tapping out an ancient melody that your grandmother used to sing while she kneaded bread, completely unaware that this innocent expression of joy and cultural tradition has become one of the most scandalous pieces of evidence against you in medieval Europe. Your natural tendency to dance and sing, those universal human expressions of happiness, celebration, and connection to music, have been twisted into proof that you participate in wild Sabbath gatherings where witches dance with demons under the cover of darkness. The medieval church had developed a deeply suspicious relationship with music and dance, viewing these activities as potentially dangerous expressions of uncontrolled passion that could lead souls away from proper spiritual focus. Your rhythmic movements while working, your habit of humming traditional songs, and your occasional spontaneous dancing appear to religious authorities as evidence of participation in pagan rituals that Christianity had been trying to suppress for centuries. You feel the weight of disapproving stares when neighbors notice your musical expressions during daily activities. Your tendency to sing while you brew, to dance while you tend your garden, or to hum traditional melodies while you work appears as evidence that you're practicing supernatural rituals disguised as innocent entertainment. The joy you express through movement and song suggests a spiritual corruption that makes you dangerously comfortable with activities that good Christians should approach with caution and moderation. The ancient traditions of folk music and dance that you've inherited represent cultural knowledge that predates Christianity in your region, making your musical abilities appear connected to pre-Christian practices that the Church considers demonic. Your grandmother's songs, passed down through generations of women, carry melodies and lyrics that originated in goddess worship, seasonal celebrations, and fertility rituals that medieval Christianity had branded as witchcraft. You discover that different types of musical expression create varying levels of suspicion among observers seeking evidence of supernatural activity. If you sing religious hymns, critics assume you're perverting holy music for magical purposes. If you perform secular songs, this proves your worldly focus and lack of proper spiritual priorities. If you create original melodies or improvise variations on traditional tunes, this suggests supernatural inspiration from demonic muses. Scholars still argue whether persecution of musical women represented genuine religious concern about pagan practices or served more practical purposes, such as eliminating cultural traditions that competed with church authority or suppressing forms of expression that gave women too much social influence and community connection. Your knowledge of traditional dances becomes particularly problematic when these movements align with seasonal celebrations or agricultural cycles. Your ability to perform harvest dances, fertility rituals disguised as folk traditions, or seasonal ceremonies that mark solstices and equinoxes connects you to pre-Christian religious practices that medieval authorities considered devil worship. Your graceful execution of these ancient movements suggests years of practice in supernatural ceremonies. The physical nature of dance itself creates suspicion about your moral character and spiritual status. Medieval religious authorities taught that bodily pleasure and rhythmic movement could lead to sexual temptation and spiritual corruption. Your comfort with dancing, your natural grace in movement, and your obvious enjoyment of physical expression suggest a dangerous comfort with bodily pleasure that virtuous women should avoid. Your musical abilities appear supernatural to communities where formal musical training was rare and expensive. Your skill at remembering complex melodies, your ability to harmonize naturally, or your talent for creating beautiful sounds using simple instruments suggest education or abilities that exceed what someone of your social status should possess. Your musical competence implies supernatural enhancement of natural talents. You realize that the timing of your musical expressions creates additional evidence against you. When you sing or dance during evening hours, this aligns with supposed times of supernatural activity. Your musical practices during seasonal transitions, singing harvest songs, performing traditional dances at planting time, or celebrating with music during traditional festival periods, connect you to pagan calendar cycles that the church was trying to eliminate. The social aspects of music and dance become twisted into evidence of supernatural networking. When you teach songs to other women, you're spreading magical formulas disguised as entertainment. When you participate in group singing or communal dancing, observers assume you're organizing or participating in witches' covens that use music to summon demonic participants to their gatherings. Your emotional responses to music provide additional ammunition for those seeking proof of your spiritual corruption. When certain melodies move you to tears, this suggests personal supernatural communication through musical channels. When rhythmic music inspires you to spontaneous movement, your responses appear to be involuntary possession by spirits who control your body through sound. Your obvious pleasure in musical expression suggests dangerous comfort with activities that can lead souls astray. You can almost feel how your musical abilities amplify interpretations of your other suspicious characteristics. Your herbal knowledge seems more magical when you sing while mixing remedies, suggesting incantations that activate supernatural properties. Your weather prediction abilities appear more supernatural when you can sense atmospheric changes through the way sound carries differently before storms. Your solitary lifestyle becomes more threatening when filled with musical expressions that suggest ongoing supernatural entertainment. Your instruments, if you own any simple ones, become evidence of magical apparatus. A basic drum used for keeping rhythm appears to be equipment for summoning spirits, while a simple flute or whistle suggests communication devices for signaling supernatural companions. Even improvised musical tools, rattles made from dried gourds, bells sewn onto clothing, or rhythm sticks carved from wood, appear to be ceremonial objects designed for ritual use. The traditional association between music and healing in folk culture creates additional problems for your reputation. When your songs seem to comfort sick children, when your humming appears to ease pain, or when your musical presence helps people feel better, observers assume you're using supernatural methods disguised as entertainment. Your musical therapy appears to be magical healing rather than the natural psychological benefits of rhythm and melody. Your memory for songs and ability to improvise new verses suggests supernatural inspiration that allows you to create magical formulas spontaneously. Your skill at adapting traditional melodies for new situations appears to be evidence of demonic creativity that enables you to compose spells and incantations as circumstances require. Your musical flexibility implies supernatural artistic abilities. The gender implications of your musical expression compound suspicions about your character. Medieval authorities particularly worried about women's music, because female voices and movements were considered more sexually tempting and spiritually dangerous than male artistic expression. Your feminine musical abilities carry additional moral weight that makes your dancing and singing appear more threatening to community spiritual safety. As you catch yourself humming and quickly fall silent, aware of the suspicious glances your musical joy attracts, you understand that even humanity's most universal forms of artistic expression have been transformed into evidence of supernatural corruption in a world where joy itself has become dangerous. You kneel beside the laboring woman, your experienced hands guiding her through the ancient ritual of childbirth. Your voice offering encouragement as you help bring new life into the world, completely unaware that your role as midwife, this sacred calling that makes you one of the most valuable members of your community, has simultaneously made you one of the most dangerous suspects in medieval Europe's witch-hunting fever. Your ability to ease the pain of labor, to save mothers and babies from death, and to facilitate the mysterious process of birth has been twisted into evidence that you possess supernatural powers over life and death itself. The profession of midwifery placed you at the intersection of life and death, pleasure and pain, the sacred and the mysterious, in ways that medieval minds struggled to categorize as purely natural. Your presence at nearly every birth in your community means you witness the most vulnerable moments in human existence. Times when souls are believed to be most susceptible to supernatural influence. Your success at guiding mothers and babies safely through childbirth appears to exceed what normal human skill should accomplish. You feel the weight of impossible expectations that come with your calling. When births go well under your care, observers assume you're using magical assistance to ensure successful outcomes. When, despite your best efforts, mothers or babies die, Critics claim you've deliberately caused these deaths through witchcraft or failed to save them because you've withdrawn your supernatural protection. Your mortality rates become evidence of your supernatural powers, regardless of whether they're better or worse than average. The intimate knowledge of women's bodies and reproductive processes that your profession requires appears suspiciously comprehensive to those seeking evidence of supernatural education. Your understanding of anatomy, your ability to predict complications, and your knowledge of techniques for managing difficult births suggests training that exceeds what normal human instruction could provide. Your medical expertise appears to be supernatural wisdom gained through demonic consultation. You discover that the tools and techniques of your trade become reinterpreted as magical apparatus and supernatural rituals. Your collection of birthing chairs, delivery aids, and specialized instruments looks like equipment for magical ceremonies rather than medical tools. Your knowledge of positioning techniques, breathing methods, and pain management strategies appears to be supernatural manipulation of natural processes rather than accumulated professional experience. Scholars still argue whether persecution of midwives represented genuine concern about supernatural practices or reflected broader social tensions around women's traditional medical authority during periods when male-dominated medical institutions were seeking to establish professional control over healthcare delivery. Your use of herbal remedies during childbirth creates additional evidence of supernatural practices. When you administer pain-relieving herbs, strengthen contractions with natural medicines, or prevent infections using traditional remedies, your pharmaceutical knowledge appears to be magical potion-making rather than legitimate medical treatment. Your success with herbal interventions suggests supernatural enhancement of natural plant properties. The timing of births under your care becomes analyzed for evidence of supernatural influence. When babies are born during auspicious times, avoiding unlucky days, arriving during favorable weather, or timing their arrival to coincide with positive community events. Observers assume you've used magical manipulation to control birth timing rather than recognizing the natural variability of human gestation. Your relationship with the laboring mothers creates additional suspicion about the nature of your assistance. Your ability to calm frightened women, to provide emotional support during painful labor, and to guide mothers through the psychological challenges of childbirth appears to exceed normal human empathy. Your success at helping women cope with pain and fear suggests supernatural influence over human emotions and mental states. You realize that your knowledge of pregnancy complications and your ability to predict difficult births appear prophetic to those who don't understand the medical signs you've learned to recognize. When you identify problems early and take preventive measures, your foresight seems supernatural. When you recommend interventions that save lives, your medical judgment appears to be supernatural guidance rather than professional expertise developed through years of experience. The survival rates of mothers and babies under your care become statistically analyzed for evidence of supernatural intervention. In an era when childbirth mortality was devastatingly high, your success at saving lives creates the impossible situation we've seen before. Competence becomes evidence of supernatural assistance. Your professional skill appears to violate natural law in communities where death during childbirth was tragically common. Your presence at the moment of birth places you at times when souls are believed to enter the physical world, making you witness to supernatural processes that most people never observe. Your familiarity with the mysteries of birth, your comfort with the spiritual aspects of bringing life into the world, and your role in the transition between life and death suggests supernatural knowledge about the boundaries between physical and spiritual realms. You can almost feel how your midwifery practice amplifies all your other suspicious characteristics. Your herbal knowledge becomes magical potion-making when used during childbirth, while your ability to predict weather becomes supernatural timing of births to coincide with favorable conditions. Your literacy allows you to keep records that appear to be magical documentation of supernatural births, while your solitary conversations seem to be consultations with demonic advisors about difficult cases. The economic implications of your profession create additional tensions within your community. As one of the few people with essential medical skills, you command respect and payment that some community members resent. Your professional success creates wealth and influence that appear disproportionate to what a woman should possess, suggesting supernatural assistance in building your practice and maintaining your reputation. Your training of other women in birthing assistance appears to be teaching magical practices rather than sharing medical knowledge. When you pass along techniques for managing difficult births, remedies for common complications, or methods for supporting laboring mothers, observers assume you're establishing a network of supernatural practitioners rather than training legitimate medical assistants. The psychological aspects of your work, your ability to remain calm during emergencies, to make life and death decisions under pressure, and to provide leadership during medical crises, suggest supernatural enhancement of natural human capabilities. Your professional composure during traumatic situations appears to exceed what normal human psychology should handle without supernatural support. Your intimate involvement with the reproductive lives of community women gives you knowledge about pregnancies, fertility issues, and family planning that appears suspiciously comprehensive. Your awareness of which women are pregnant before they announce it publicly. Your understanding of fertility patterns and your knowledge about preventing or encouraging conception suggests supernatural insight into reproductive mysteries that virtuous women shouldn't possess. The sacred nature of birth itself, with its connections to creation, divinity, and the mysteries of life, makes your professional involvement with these processes appear to be participation in supernatural events that exceed normal human authority. Your role in facilitating the arrival of new souls suggests communication with divine or demonic forces that control human reproduction. As you wash the blood from your hands after another successful delivery, you understand that even the most essential and life-saving work has been transformed into evidence of supernatural corruption when fear overwhelms gratitude and suspicion triumphs over recognition. You wake from another vivid dream where you soared above your village on wings of moonlight, conversing with strange figures who spoke in languages you somehow understood, exploring landscapes that existed nowhere in the waking world but felt more real than your own cottage when you experienced them. In medieval Europe, your rich dream life and occasional prophetic visions, those neurological phenomena that modern science explains through REM sleep patterns and subconscious processing, have become the most damning evidence yet that your soul regularly travels to supernatural realms for meetings with demonic hosts. The medieval understanding of dreams relied heavily on spiritual interpretations that divided nocturnal visions into categories: divine revelations sent by God, natural dreams produced by bodily humors, or demonic communications initiated by evil spirits. Your particularly vivid and memorable dreams, especially those containing unusual imagery or prophetic elements, automatically fall into the most dangerous category evidence of regular supernatural contact that proves your participation in witchcraft activities. You feel the growing isolation as you learn to hide your dream experiences from neighbors who might interpret any unusual nocturnal vision as proof of your guilt. Your natural tendency to share interesting dreams, to seek interpretation of confusing imagery, or to mention prophetic dreams that later prove accurate, becomes impossible in a community where dream content serves as evidence in supernatural prosecutions. The Church's teachings about soul travel during sleep provide theological framework for interpreting your dream experiences as literal supernatural journeys. Religious authorities taught that while the body rests, the soul could be called away for meetings with spiritual entities, either divine encounters for the blessed or demonic consultations for the corrupted. Your vivid dreams suggest your soul has been making regular trips to participate in witches' Sabbaths and supernatural gatherings. You discover that different types of dream content create varying levels of suspicion among those analyzing your nocturnal experiences. Dreams about flying indicate your participation in supernatural transportation to witches' meetings. Dreams involving unknown people suggest contact with demonic entities or other supernatural practitioners. Dreams set in unfamiliar locations imply your soul has visited otherworldly realms where normal humans cannot travel. Scholars still argue whether medieval authorities genuinely believed in literal dream-based soul travel, or whether dream content provided convenient evidence for prosecuting individuals whose other behaviors had already marked them as suspicious within their communities. Your occasional prophetic dreams, those times when dream imagery later manifests in waking life, create the most compelling evidence of supernatural communication. When you dream of storms that later strike, of illnesses that subsequently afflict community members, or of events that unfold exactly as your dreams predicted, observers assume you're receiving advanced information from supernatural sources rather than recognizing the natural psychological processes that sometimes allow subconscious minds to anticipate future developments. The emotional intensity of your dreams becomes analyzed for evidence of supernatural influence. Dreams that leave you feeling frightened upon waking suggest you've witnessed or participated in evil activities during soul travel. Dreams that produce feelings of joy or ecstasy imply you've enjoyed pleasurable experiences with demonic companions. Dreams that create lasting emotional impact appear to be genuine experiences rather than mere nocturnal imagination. You realize that your ability to remember dreams in unusual detail appears supernatural to communities where most people either don't recall their dreams or remember only fragments. Your capacity to narrate complex dream sequences, to recall specific conversations from nocturnal visions, or to describe dream imagery with vivid precision suggests your dream experiences are more than normal sleep phenomena. Your dream content often includes elements that align suspiciously with folkloric descriptions of witchcraft activities. Dreams of feasting might represent participation in supernatural banquets, while dreams of dancing could indicate attendance at demonic celebrations. Dreams involving animals, especially your black cat, suggest communication with familiar spirits, while dreams of healing or harming others imply practicing supernatural medicine during soul travel. The timing of your most vivid dreams creates additional evidence against you. Dreams that occur during traditionally supernatural hours, around midnight, during the new moon, or on dates associated with seasonal celebrations, appear to be scheduled supernatural meetings rather than random neurological events. Your dream patterns seem to follow a supernatural calendar that coordinates with other witchcraft activities. You can almost feel how your dream experiences amplify interpretations of all your other suspicious characteristics. Your herbal knowledge appears to be information gathered during supernatural consultations, while your weather prediction abilities seem to be intelligence received from demonic sources during dream meetings. Your successful midwifery practice looks like supernatural assistance promised during nocturnal negotiations with evil entities. Your occasional sleep disturbances, talking in your sleep, restless movements during dreams, or waking at unusual hours become interpreted as evidence of supernatural activity. When you speak during dreams, observers assume you're conducting conversations with invisible companions. When you move restlessly, this suggests your soul is struggling to return from supernatural journeys. When you wake suddenly, you appear to be interrupted while participating in demonic activities. The physical symptoms you sometimes experience after particularly intense dreams, fatigue, headaches, or emotional residue suggest your soul has undergone genuine supernatural experiences that affected your physical body. Your post-dream exhaustion appears to be the natural result of nocturnal supernatural labor, while emotional effects prove the psychological impact of genuine otherworldly encounters. Your interest in dream interpretation, whether through traditional folk knowledge or personal curiosity about dream meaning, becomes evidence of supernatural education. Your ability to analyze dream symbolism suggests training in magical arts, while your knowledge of dream traditions connects you to practices that predate Christian authority in your region. The recurring themes in your dreams create patterns that observers interpret as evidence of ongoing supernatural relationships. If you frequently dream about specific people, this suggests regular contact with particular demonic entities. If your dreams consistently involve certain activities, these appear to be repeated supernatural practices rather than random neurological processing of daily experiences. Your ability to influence others through sharing dream content, when your prophetic dreams warn people of dangers or your symbolic dreams provide guidance for community decisions, suggests supernatural power over other people's lives through dream-based intelligence gathering. Your dream-derived knowledge appears to give you unfair advantages in predicting and influencing future events. The sexual content of some dreams, particularly common during certain life phases, becomes interpreted as evidence of supernatural seduction or demonic relationships. Dreams involving intimate encounters suggest participation in sexual activities with demonic entities, while dreams of pregnancy or birth might indicate supernatural reproduction with evil spirits. Your comfort with discussing dreams, your lack of fear about unusual dream content, and your obvious fascination with nocturnal visions suggest dangerous familiarity with supernatural realms that virtuous Christians should avoid. Your ease with dream experiences appears to prove regular practice in soul travel that has made supernatural activities feel natural and safe. As you carefully avoid mentioning your latest prophetic dream, which showed exactly where the village's lost sheep would be found, you understand that even humanity's most universal experience, dreaming, has been weaponized against you in a world where imagination itself has become evidence of guilt. You catch your reflection in the water bucket and notice features that have always been part of your natural appearance, perhaps eyes of different colors, a prominent birthmark, an unusual scar, or teeth that grew in crooked patterns, completely unaware that these simple accidents of genetics and development have become a catalog of supernatural evidence against you. In medieval Europe, your physical differences, whether present from birth or acquired through life's normal injuries and illnesses, are now interpreted as visible proof that dark forces have marked, touched, or claimed your body for evil purposes. The medieval mind operated on the principle that God created humans in perfect divine image, making any deviation from perceived normality automatically suspect of supernatural interference. Your heterochromia, one brown eye, and one green, appears to observers as evidence that you can see simultaneously into the natural world and the supernatural realm. Your crooked teeth suggest you've been physically altered by demonic forces, while that scar from a childhood accident becomes reinterpreted as evidence of a supernatural attack or ritual marking. You feel the constant weight of trying to hide or minimize your physical differences, understanding that every unusual feature provides ammunition for those seeking proof of your supernatural nature. Your attempts to conceal a prominent birthmark under clothing, to avoid smiling widely to hide your irregular teeth, or to look away quickly to prevent people from noticing. Your different colored eyes create additional suspicious behavior that suggests you're aware of your own supernatural markings. The medieval medical understanding of physical differences relied heavily on supernatural explanations for variations that modern science explains through genetics, developmental biology, and environmental factors. Your slightly webbed fingers appear to be evidence of supernatural parentage rather than a common genetic variation. Your unusual height, whether particularly tall or notably short, suggests intervention by otherworldly forces in your normal human development. You discover that different types of physical differences create varying levels of supernatural suspicion among observers seeking evidence of your otherworldly connections. Congenital differences present from birth suggest prenatal supernatural influence or demonic interference with natural development. Acquired differences from accidents or illnesses imply subsequent supernatural attacks or voluntary participation in rituals that left permanent marks on your body. Scholars still argue whether focus on physical differences represented genuine belief in supernatural marking or provided convenient visual evidence for persecuting individuals who already face suspicion due to social isolation, economic competition, or religious nonconformity within their communities. Your scars tell stories that get reinterpreted through supernatural lenses regardless of their actual origins. That mark from falling out of a tree as a child becomes evidence of a failed attempt to fly using supernatural powers. The scar from a kitchen accident suggests you were injured while mixing magical potions. Even surgical scars from necessary medical procedures appear to be evidence of supernatural healing or ritual markings created during demonic ceremonies. The asymmetry of human faces and bodies, normally invisible to casual observation, becomes magnified under suspicious examination. Your slightly uneven eyebrows suggest supernatural interference with natural facial development. One shoulder that sits marginally higher than the other appears to be evidence of carrying supernatural burdens or participating in demonic labor. Even the natural variations in limb length that affect everyone become interpreted as proof of supernatural alteration. Your unusual physical abilities or limitations create additional evidence of supernatural influence. If you possess exceptional flexibility, this suggests unnatural physical properties granted by demonic forces. If you have limited mobility due to injury or illness, observers assume you're being punished for supernatural activities or that evil spirits inhabit your weakened body. Your physical capabilities always appear to exceed or fall short of normal human ranges in suspicious ways. You realize that your clothing choices and grooming habits, designed to manage or accommodate your physical differences, become interpreted as attempts to hide supernatural evidence or display supernatural symbols. Your preference for head coverings to hide unusual hair patterns appears to be concealing ritual markings. Your choice of loose clothing to accommodate physical differences suggests hiding supernatural alterations to your body shape. The way light affects your appearance at different times of day creates varying impressions that observers interpret as evidence of supernatural transformation abilities. Your different colored eyes might appear more pronounced in certain lighting conditions, suggesting you can alter your appearance through magical means. Shadows that fall differently across asymmetrical features make you appear to change shape or expression in ways that seem supernatural. Your family resemblance to relatives who share similar physical variations becomes evidence of a hereditary supernatural corruption. When your unusual features appear in your children or match those of your parents, observers assume your entire bloodline carries supernatural markings passed down through generations of supernatural practitioners. Your genetic inheritance appears to be a spiritual curse rather than normal biological variation. You can almost feel how your physical differences amplify interpretations of all your other suspicious characteristics. Your herbal knowledge seems more magical when possessed by someone whose unusual eyes suggest supernatural sight. Your weather prediction abilities appear more supernatural when demonstrated by someone whose physical differences suggest otherworldly connections. Your successful childbearing becomes more suspicious when achieved by someone whose body bears visible supernatural marks. The psychological impact of constant scrutiny of your physical appearance creates behaviors that generate additional suspicion. Your self-consciousness about your differences might be interpreted as shame about supernatural markings. Your attempts to deflect attention from your unusual features appear to be deliberate concealment of supernatural evidence. Your acceptance of your appearance suggests dangerous comfort with supernatural alterations. Your interaction with mirrors, reflective surfaces, or portraits becomes analyzed for evidence of supernatural properties. Medieval folklore suggested that supernatural beings might not cast proper reflections or might appear differently in mirrors than in person. Your natural tendency to avoid looking at yourself, common among people self-conscious about physical differences, appears to be evidence that you fear supernatural detection through reflected images. The medical treatments you might seek for physical differences become reinterpreted as supernatural remedies. Your use of herbs to treat skin conditions appears to be magical attempts to conceal supernatural markings. Your efforts to manage physical limitations through exercise or adaptation suggest you're using supernatural strength to overcome natural weaknesses. Your acceptance of permanent differences implies comfort with supernatural alterations that virtuous people would attempt to pray away. Your comfort level around others with physical differences creates additional suspicion about supernatural networking. Your empathy toward people with disabilities or unusual appearances suggests recognition of shared supernatural status rather than normal human compassion. Your knowledge about managing physical challenges appears to be supernatural education rather than personal experience and community support. The seasonal changes that affect everyone's appearance, weight fluctuations, skin color variations, hair texture changes become interpreted as evidence of your supernatural ability to alter your physical form. Your natural seasonal variations appear to be controlled transformations rather than normal biological responses to environmental changes. As you carefully arrange your clothing to minimize the visibility of that distinctive scar, while knowing that even your caution about it will be interpreted as suspicious concealment, you understand that even the most basic aspects of physical existence have been transformed into evidence against your humanity. You survey the results of your hard work, the thriving herb garden that feeds your family through winter, the successful brewing business that provides steady income, the reputation for healing that brings grateful patients to your door with payment for your services, and realize with creeping horror that your economic success, this prosperity you've built through skill and dedication, has become the most damning evidence yet against you in medieval Europe. Your ability to support yourself and even accumulate modest wealth without obvious male protection or inherited resources appears impossible through natural means, suggesting you must have made supernatural bargains to achieve such suspicious prosperity. The medieval economy operated on rigid assumptions about who should prosper and how wealth should be acquired, making your success as an independent woman automatically suspect in communities where most people struggled with subsistence living. Your comfortable lifestyle, your ability to purchase goods that others cannot afford, and your financial independence from male relatives suggest supernatural assistance that allows you to bypass the economic limitations that constrain virtuous women. You feel the weight of resentful stares from neighbors whose own economic struggles make your success appear not just unusual, but actively threatening to the natural order. Your prosperity creates a stark contrast with families who barely survive from harvest to harvest, making your wealth appear to come at their expense through supernatural means. Your success suggests you've discovered unfair advantages that other community members cannot access through honest labor. The sources of your income become analyzed for evidence of supernatural enhancement. Your herbal practice succeeds too consistently, suggesting your remedies work through magical rather than natural properties. Your brewing produces ale that sells faster and tastes better than competitors' products, implying supernatural assistance in fermentation and flavoring. Your midwifery practice commands higher fees and better outcomes than other practitioners, indicating demonic help in saving lives and easing births. You discover that your business acumen and practical intelligence appear suspiciously sophisticated for someone of your gender and social background. Your ability to negotiate fair prices, to manage complex transactions, to plan ahead for seasonal variations in supply and demand suggest educational insight that exceeds what normal human learning could provide. Your commercial success implies supernatural guidance in making profitable decisions. Scholars still argue whether accusations based on economic success represented genuine belief in supernatural assistance or provided convenient justifications for redistributing wealth from successful individuals to communities struggling with poverty and resource scarcity during difficult economic periods. Your ability to predict market conditions and adjust your business strategies accordingly appears prophetic to observers who don't recognize your careful attention to economic patterns. When you increase herb production before disease outbreaks create higher demand, when you brew extra ale before celebrations require additional supply, or when you stockpile materials before prices rise, your foresight seems supernatural rather than simply good business planning. The quality of your goods consistently exceeds what your competitors produce using similar methods and materials, creating suspicion about the source of your superior results. Your ale never spoils when others' batches go bad. Your herbs remain potent longer than normal storage should allow, and your remedies work more effectively than identical preparations made by other healers. Your product quality suggests supernatural enhancement that gives you unfair competitive advantages. You realize that your financial independence allows you to make choices that appear suspicious to communities where economic desperation controls most people's decisions. Your ability to refuse customers you don't trust, to turn down profitable opportunities that seem morally questionable, or to donate services to poor families implies you don't need money as desperately as normal humans should. Your selective approach to earning income implies supernatural financial security. Your investment strategies and long-term planning appear impossibly sophisticated for someone who should be focused on immediate survival needs. Your practice of saving money for future emergencies, investing in equipment improvements, or planning business expansion suggests supernatural knowledge about future conditions that normal humans cannot predict. Your economic foresight exceeds what natural intelligence should provide. The timing of your financial successes coincides suspiciously with community hardships in ways that suggest supernatural resource redistribution. When crop failures force neighbors to purchase your stored food supplies, when livestock diseases increase demand for your healing services, or when harsh weather creates markets for your specialized products, your prosperity appears to grow directly from others' misfortunes through supernatural manipulation. You can almost taste the bitter irony that your economic success, which should prove your value to the community, instead marks you as a dangerous supernatural threat. Your ability to contribute to the local economy through employment, purchases, and services becomes twisted into evidence that you're extracting resources through evil means, rather than creating legitimate value through honest work. Your generous charitable activities, designed to demonstrate good citizenship and Christian virtue, become reinterpreted as evidence of supernatural guilt. Your donations to poor families suggest you're trying to buy spiritual protection or community silence about your supernatural activities. Your gifts to the church appear to be attempts to corrupt religious authorities or prevent divine punishment for your evil practices. The tools and equipment that support your economic activities appear suspiciously sophisticated for someone of your background. Your well-maintained brewing equipment suggests supernatural assistance in preventing normal wear and breakdown. Your extensive collection of healing tools implies supernatural guidance in acquiring professional resources. Your comfortable living arrangements appear to exceed what natural income should afford. Your ability to weather economic crises that devastate other community members suggests supernatural protection that shields you from natural consequences of market fluctuations, crop failures, or political disruptions. When others lose their savings, struggle to find customers, or face business failures, your continued prosperity appears to violate natural economic laws that should affect everyone equally. Your knowledge of distant market conditions, trade opportunities, and economic trends appears impossibly comprehensive for someone who rarely travels beyond your immediate area. Your understanding of regional price variations, seasonal demand patterns, and long-distance trade relationships suggests supernatural intelligence gathering that normal humans cannot accomplish through conventional means. The contracts and business relationships you maintain seem unusually favorable compared to agreements other community members negotiate. Your suppliers offer better prices, your customers pay more readily, and your business partners provide more advantageous terms than normal commercial relationships should generate. Your networking success implies supernatural influence over other people's business decisions. Your economic resilience during personal crises, maintaining income during illness, rebuilding after accidents, or continuing business during family emergencies suggests supernatural support that protects your financial interests when natural disasters should destroy your prosperity along with everyone else's economic security. Do you remember all that evidence accumulating against you? The physical marks, the independence, the knowledge, the dreams, the success at every endeavor? Now, your economic prosperity provides the final piece that medieval prosecutors need to explain how all your other supernatural activities have been funded and supported through demonic contracts that trade your soul for earthly success. As you count the coins that represent months of honest labor, you understand that even financial security, the goal of every hardworking person, has become evidence of supernatural corruption in a world where success itself has become suspicious. You watch in growing horror as your neighbor Maria is dragged away by the witch hunters, her cries of innocence echoing through the village square, and you feel your heart breaking as you realize you cannot speak up in her defense without sealing your own doom. Your natural compassion, your intimate knowledge of Maria's gentle character, and your moral certainty of her innocence compel you to want to testify on her behalf. But in medieval Europe, Defending someone accused of witchcraft has become the most dangerous act you could possibly commit, guaranteeing your own immediate accusation and execution. The twisted logic of witch hunting had created a social environment where compassion itself became evidence of supernatural conspiracy. Your willingness to vouch for Maria's character suggests you know her intimately through shared participation in supernatural activities. Your defense of her innocence implies you possess insider knowledge of witchcraft practices that allows you to distinguish between genuine practitioners and innocent victims. Your emotional investment in her fate appears to prove your membership in the same supernatural network. You feel the paralyzing weight of impossible moral choices as you watch Maria's terrified face, searching the crowd for support that no one dares provide. Your silence feels like betrayal of everything decent within your soul. Yet speaking would transform you from hidden suspect into active target. Your knowledge of Maria's daily life, her kindness to children, her devotion to her family, becomes dangerous intelligence that you cannot safely share without revealing suspicious familiarity with someone now branded as evil. The medieval legal system had developed procedures that made defending accused witches tantamount to confessing supernatural involvement. Your testimony about Maria's good character would be dismissed as either deliberate deception designed to protect a fellow practitioner or evidence of supernatural influence that made you unable to recognize obvious signs of her corruption. Your personal knowledge of her innocence becomes proof of your own guilt rather than exonerating evidence for her defense. You discover that even your emotional responses to Maria's persecution provide evidence against you. Your visible distress at her arrest suggests personal investment that exceeds normal neighborly concern. Your anger at the accusations implies you're offended by attacks against supernatural practices rather than simply outraged by injustice. Your tears for her suffering appear to be grief for losing a supernatural ally rather than human sympathy for innocent suffering. Scholars still argue whether the prohibition against defending accused witches represented a calculated strategy to prevent community solidarity against witch-hunting authorities, or genuine belief that supernatural practitioners would naturally support each other through coordinated defensive testimonies. Your relationship with Maria becomes forensically examined for evidence of supernatural connections. Your friendship appears to be a cover for collaborative witchcraft activities. Your shared activities, perhaps brewing together, exchanging recipes, or helping with each other's children, are reinterpreted as joint supernatural practices disguised as innocent cooperation. Your mutual support during difficult times suggests a pact to assist each other through supernatural means. The specific knowledge you possess about Maria's daily habits, her personal struggles, and her private thoughts creates additional evidence of supernatural communication. Your awareness of her financial difficulties suggests you've been consulted about magical solutions to her problems. Your understanding of her family relationships implies she's confided supernatural secrets that innocent neighbors shouldn't know. Your familiarity with her personal business appears to exceed normal social boundaries. You realize that your hesitation to condemn Maria provides as much evidence as active defense would create. Your inability to immediately agree with the accusation suggests personal investment rather than simply shock at false charges against an innocent person. Your measured responses to questions about her character appear to be careful diplomatic answers designed to protect both her and yourself from supernatural exposure. Your previous interactions with Maria become re-examined through the lens of supernatural suspicion. Times when you visited her cottage appear to be coven meetings rather than social calls. Occasions when you work together on projects are reinterpreted as collaborative spellcasting rather than mutual assistance. Your shared laughter and friendship become evidence of supernatural bonding rather than natural human connection. The gifts you've exchanged with Maria over years of friendship transform into evidence of supernatural commerce. That jar of honey you gave her becomes a magical ingredient, while the herbal remedy she provided for your headaches appears to be supernatural medicine that proves your ongoing supernatural relationship. Your generous exchanges of goods and services suggest mutual support within a supernatural network. You can almost feel how defending Maria would combine with all your existing suspicious characteristics to create an overwhelming case against you. Your herbal knowledge would appear to be specialized expertise that allows you to recognize innocent plant medicine versus actual supernatural practices. Your economic success would seem to be shared prosperity within a supernatural business network. Your physical differences would become matching supernatural markings that identify members of the same demonic alliance. Your silence during Maria's interrogation becomes interpreted as either cowardly abandonment of a supernatural ally or careful strategic withdrawal designed to protect remaining network members. Your visible internal struggle between speaking and staying quiet appears to be conflict between loyalty to supernatural companions and fear of personal exposure rather than moral anguish about witnessing injustice. The information you could provide about Maria's actual activities, her daily routines, her genuine concerns, her real relationships becomes dangerous knowledge that implies surveillance or intimate cooperation that exceeds normal neighborly awareness. Your detailed understanding of her life suggests either supernatural spying abilities or close collaborative relationship that innocent neighbors wouldn't develop. Your potential testimony about Maria's character would face immediate challenges about the source of your knowledge. How do you know she's never harmed anyone unless you've been present during her supernatural activities? How can you be certain she's innocent unless you understand witchcraft practices well enough to recognize their absence? Your defense becomes self-incrimination, regardless of how carefully you construct your arguments. The emotional bond you feel with Maria, that natural human connection built through years of friendship and mutual support, becomes reinterpreted as supernatural linking that connects practitioner souls across physical distance. Your genuine affection for her appears to be evidence of spiritual alliance rather than simple friendship, while your concern for her welfare suggests protective instincts that exceed normal human relationships. Your knowledge of other community members who might support Maria becomes additional evidence of supernatural networking. Your awareness of who else considers her innocent suggests you understand the membership and opinions of her supernatural support network. Your insight into community dynamics implies supernatural intelligence gathering about potential allies and enemies. As you watch Maria disappear into the custody of witch hunters while your silence burns like acid in your throat, you understand that even the most basic human virtues, loyalty, friendship, and moral courage, have been weaponized against you in a system designed to make compassion itself a capital crime. You sit in your cottage as darkness falls, listening to the sounds of the search party gathering in the village square, their torches flickering like malevolent stars as they prepare to come for you. Every single thread of evidence we've woven together throughout this long, terrifying journey has converged into this perfect storm of suspicion that makes your guilt appear absolutely certain to medieval minds seeking supernatural explanations for the inexplicable complexities of human existence. The birthmark that marked you from your first breath, your dangerous independence as a woman living without male protection, your knowledge of healing herbs that work too well to be merely natural. Each piece of evidence seemed manageable alone, but together they've created a web of supernatural proof that tightens around you like a hangman's noose. Your red hair catches the firelight streaming through your window, that genetic accident that medieval minds interpreted as Satan's brand, while your black cat presses against your leg, seeking comfort while unknowingly providing the final visual confirmation of your supposed demonic allegiances. Do you remember how your left-handedness marked every gesture you made with sinister implications? How your brewing skills transformed life-sustaining work into evidence of magical potion making? How your survival of the water trial proved your guilt rather than your innocence? Each revelation built upon the last, creating an avalanche of suspicion that no amount of actual evidence could stop or redirect toward truth. Your successful childbearing, which should have marked you as blessed, instead suggested supernatural protection that came at the cost of your soul. Your literacy, that gateway to knowledge and wisdom, became proof of forbidden learning that exceeded what someone like you should possess. Your ability to predict weather patterns, born from generations of careful observation, appeared to be supernatural control over atmospheric forces that could destroy crops and kill livestock. The seizures that racked your body against your will provided compelling evidence of demonic possession, while your habit of talking to yourself during solitary work suggested ongoing conversations with invisible evil companions. Your natural joy in music and dance connected you to pagan traditions that predated Christian authority, while your success as a midwife placed you at the intersection of life and death, where supernatural forces were believed to be most active. Your vivid dreams, those neurological phenomena that every human experiences, became proof of soul travel to supernatural realms where you participated in demonic Sabbaths and received evil instruction. Your physical differences, whether present from birth or acquired through life's normal accidents, were interpreted as visible supernatural markings that proved your body had been claimed and altered by dark forces. Your economic prosperity, achieved through skill and hard work, appeared impossible without supernatural assistance in communities where most people barely survived from harvest to harvest. And finally, your compassionate impulse to defend innocent Maria from false accusations became the ultimate proof of your membership in a supernatural conspiracy that protected its own members through coordinated deception. Scholars still argue whether this perfect storm of accumulated suspicion represented genuine religious terror or systematic elimination of non-conforming individuals who threatened established social hierarchies. But tonight, such academic debates offer no comfort as you hear your name being called in the village square below. You understand with crystal clarity that every normal human characteristic you possess has been filtered through the lens of supernatural suspicion until your entire existence appears to be evidence of otherworldly corruption. Your intelligence became magical wisdom, your independence became supernatural protection, your success became demonic assistance, and your compassion became supernatural networking. The torch-bearing crowd approaches your cottage with the confidence of people who believe they're performing holy work by eliminating a dangerous supernatural threat to their community's safety. They've seen the evidence, they've heard the testimony, they've witnessed the patterns that seem to prove beyond reasonable doubt that you represent everything they fear about forces beyond their understanding and control. You realize that you never had a chance to prove your innocence, because innocence itself became suspect in a system designed to find guilt, regardless of actual evidence. Every defense you might have offered would have been twisted into additional proof of your supernatural nature. Every explanation would have demonstrated suspicious knowledge. Every denial would have appeared to be supernatural deception. The medieval world created an intellectual trap from which escape was impossible once suspicion focused on your particular combination of characteristics. Being different was dangerous. Being competent was suspicious. Being successful was supernatural. Being compassionate was conspiratorial. The very qualities that should have marked you as valuable to your community instead marked you for destruction. You can almost taste the bitter irony that your persecution represents humanity's fear of its own best qualities. Your healing knowledge, your weather wisdom, your economic success, your literary skills, your reproductive health, your musical joy. These represent human achievement and potential that should be celebrated and preserved. Instead, they've been reinterpreted as evidence of supernatural corruption that must be eliminated to protect community safety. The voices grow closer now, calling your name with the mixture of fear and righteous anger that characterizes people convinced they're confronting ultimate evil. The accumulation of evidence against you has reached critical mass, creating a social avalanche that cannot be stopped by reason, truth, or justice. In these final moments before the inevitable, you understand that your story represents thousands of similar stories throughout medieval Europe. Intelligent, capable, independent people whose very competence and nonconformity made them targets in societies that feared difference and sought supernatural explanations for anything that challenged established hierarchies and conventional wisdom. The torches reach your door now, and rough voices demand your surrender to face judgment for crimes that exist only in the terrified imagination of communities seeking someone to blame for the uncertainties, hardships, and inexplicable complexities of medieval existence. Your fate was sealed not by any evil you committed, but by the dangerous combination of being different, capable, and visible in an age when such characteristics could literally cost you your life. As the door splinters under their assault and hands reach for you in the flickering torchlight, you carry with you the knowledge that truth and innocence provide no protection against the perfect storm of fear, superstition, and accumulated suspicion that has finally crashed over you with the force of absolute certainty. The medieval world's need for supernatural explanations has found its perfect target in your combination of unusual characteristics, and no amount of actual innocence can compete with the terrifying logic of evidence that seems to prove your guilt beyond any reasonable doubt. Now comes the gentle wind down, the soft transition from terror to peace that will carry listeners safely into sleep. You feel your heartbeat slowing as we step back from this medieval nightmare into the safety of our modern understanding. The witch-hunting fever that once claimed thousands of innocent lives has faded into historical memory, leaving behind lessons about the dangers of fear, the importance of evidence-based reasoning, and the precious value of tolerance for human difference. Tonight's journey through these dark centuries reminds us how fortunate we are to live in times when being different is celebrated rather than feared, when knowledge is valued rather than suspected, when success is admired rather than seen as supernatural. The brave women and men who suffered through these persecutions gave their lives to teach us the importance of protecting the vulnerable, questioning accusations, and celebrating the beautiful diversity of human experience. As you drift toward sleep, let go of the fear and suspicion that once ruled medieval minds. Instead, embrace the knowledge that curiosity is wonderful, that independence is strength, that success is possible through natural means, and that being different makes the world more interesting rather than more dangerous. Rest peacefully, knowing that the dark ages of witch hunting have passed into history, leaving behind a more enlightened world where your unique qualities are treasures rather than threats. Sleep well, knowing that tomorrow you'll wake in a world where healing knowledge saves lives, where weather prediction prevents disasters, where literacy opens doorways to wisdom, and where dreams inspire rather than damn. Sweet dreams await you in safety and peace.